When entering the world of games, people can become whoever they desire, such as a young character, regardless of their real-life age. This allows them to do things they can't outside the game, which is why these games are so wonderful. The 38-year-old protagonist starts by creating his character to begin a game called One More Free Life Online. He names his avatar Earth and makes him look quite youthful, approximately his real-life age, not forgetting his black hair and eyes. In reality, he was just an ordinary salaryman who could only spare 2 or 3 hours a day for gaming. Therefore, he preferred playing alone to avoid inconveniencing other players. For this reason, he builds his character to be unattractive, even selecting so-called trash abilities. Out of the 10 abilities he chooses, 6 are quite poor, like a bow that never hits its target and the herbalist skill, which is unnecessary in the game since anyone can buy cheap potions from an NPC. He also takes his skill for an extremely weak kick, wind magic that doesn't work against fire or earth elements, and concealment, which has a high MP cost. Lastly, he takes physical skills enhancement, which can be used for running, using weapons, and crafting, but is superficial. He finalizes his character with the intention of being avoided by other players and enjoying peace. And so Earth begins playing One More Free Life Online, where the objective is simply to enjoy life. As it's not a game with a grand mission like defeating the Demon King, players can do as they please, whether it's fighting monsters, crafting items, or just chatting with others, living a carefree life. He starts in a bustling area where a girl named Mian offers to sell him some equipment. However, Earth suddenly collides with a troublemaker player wearing golden armor and accompanied by a group of Mohawks. He mocks Earth for using a useless bow and kicks him, acting quite unnecessarily before leaving. Subsequently, Earth continues to the training center, where he decides to hone his archery skills. However, the bow is so terrible that even after multiple attempts, he doesn't come close to hitting the target. But after shooting about 100 arrows, he finally begins to make progress, hitting the target and reaching level 5 in that skill. Next, Earth trains his wind magic and his kick, and after learning the minimum he needs, he heads out to the field. But upon arriving, he encounters chaos and thinks it's better to focus on collecting herbs for now. So Earth sets out in search of his collection, using his distance vision to locate some of the herbs. However, he realizes he can't analyze them right away. It doesn't take him long to raise his herbalist skill to level 3, allowing him to see the categories of each plant. With this, he can analyze their functions, discovering that he had collected 2 herbs that momentarily stopped breathing, wondering why the game placed them in an initial area. Afterward, Earth buys a beginner's potion production set at the potion shop to make a healing potion. He follows all the necessary steps, obtaining the item he wanted. In that game, after producing the item, you could choose the option to produce in bulk, making several items at once. Then he makes an antidote as well, raising the herbalist skill to level 7. With the healing potion and antidote ready, he returns to the field for his first hunt, glad to see the place had finally emptied. Suddenly, Earth spots a horned rabbit. He concentrates to hit the small creature on the first try since he couldn't shoot in sequence with his bow. However, the rabbit senses his presence, dodges the arrow, and attacks Earth. The boy then launches another arrow, hitting the animal's leg, but this only makes the rabbit angrier. With no other choice, Earth gives up on his bow and uses his kicking ability to protect himself. After kicking the rabbit twice, he finally manages to successfully finish his first hunt, obtaining the monster's skin and meat. He thinks that this way he'll end up becoming an expert in kicking rather than archery, when he's startled by 2 players who had witnessed his hunt. They introduce themselves as Zwei and Millie and add Earth to their friend list. Later, Earth continues his hunting to gain more experience and reduce the time it takes to defeat a monster. He locates another horned rabbit, but just like the previous one, it notices his presence and flees, forcing Earth to give up on using his bow and try another skill, using his wind magic to hit the monster. He thinks of a way to hide his presence, remembering he had the concealment ability. So by activating this skill, Earth finally manages to hunt with his bow, surprised at how well that combination worked. However, despite wanting to play all night, it was already late in the day, and he needed to get some rest for work the next day. And so after working, Earth returns to the game. He buys a piece of bread from an NPC, but it tastes bad. Since he can taste the game's food, Earth decides to cook something more appetizing. He cooks a horned rabbit meat, but it turns out extremely tough. Therefore, he prepares another piece of meat, testing a different way to cook the dish, which turns out much better than the previous one. Then Earth continues cooking to further improve his culinary skill in the game until he makes a dish with such a delicious aroma that it attracts several players who are nearby. Before he knows it, Earth realizes there is a crowd willing to pay a good price for a plate of steak, shelling out 20 times what he paid for a piece of bread. However, people were hungry and impatient, leaving Earth desperate to cook as many dishes as possible, until after cooking several times, he reaches level 20 in that skill, gaining the power of fast cooking. With this, he manages to quickly fulfill orders until that nightmare is over. Later, he decides to make a better bow to use in his hunts since there was no demand for that type of weapon, and he had to create one himself. After some time chopping wood and more, Earth finally finishes his new bow, which, while still a weak weapon against monsters, was better than the beginner's bow he had. However, he decides to experiment with strengthening the bow using more wood, making the weapon slightly more potent. Satisfied with his work, Earth goes to buy some armor. He then analyzes the levels of each skill, seeing that he was already at level 25 in cooking. Suddenly, he remembers that he had just spent most of his money to buy the armor. So to recoup that money, he decides to use the game's vending machines to try selling grape-flavor healing potions to see if players would like them. Later, he heads out to the field to hunt some monsters, and while analyzing the ones nearby, he chooses the nearest wolf. After activating concealment, he shoots with his bow. Earth then proceeds to his next hunt, training his kick and wind magic as well. He defeats several monsters, acquiring various types of items and increasing the levels of his 3 attacks. However, after hunting so much, he runs out of arrows and decides to call it a day. When he returns, he sees that some players had already gone to the vending machine and bought his grape potion, with some comments expressing their approval and requesting more, which makes Earth quite happy. But when he arrives in town, he is confronted with a desperate crowd in search of healing potions. This puzzles Earth as they could buy as many potions as they wanted from the NPCs. To understand what was happening, he calls Zwei. Earth tells him that when he returned from hunting, all the players in town were searching for potions. Zwei explains that not long ago, the NPCs announced that the potions had run out, causing everyone to frantically search for more. Zwei then warns that this situation will likely fall on Earth as he had just sold potion juice. Only at that moment does Earth realize that his friend was right, as he was already surrounded by players eager to buy some of his potion. Earth tries to calm the people down by explaining that since there are so many of them, he'll have to set a purchase limit for each player, allowing each to take 5 potions. Everyone is thrilled with the number, but impatient ones quickly appear, urging Earth. Fortunately, Zwei and Millie step in to help, with him organizing the people while she handles the accounting. This leaves Earth to focus solely on production. Since very few players had the herbalist skill, which allowed them to make potions as it had been considered a useless skill, until that moment, Earth is quite overwhelmed, working tirelessly to avoid player disputes over the lack of potions. He activates the mass production capability, but after a long time making potions, his medicinal herbs run out. So he informs the players that he can only sell the remaining potions, which won't be enough for everyone. People understand the situation and ask Earth to make more potions the next day. But at that moment, the troublemaker player appears, accompanied by his group of Mohawks, and demands that Earth hand over all the healing potions to him. Earth explains that the few remaining potions were for the people waiting in line, but the player is not willing to accept no for an answer. Zwei tries to maintain order, but the guy punches him, causing him to fall to the ground, making it clear what would happen if Earth opposed him. However, Earth shows that the guy's attitude was annoying the other players. He then offers to pay for the potions, but Earth says that's not the problem, as cutting in line would make him unpopular with other players, including the producers, which would certainly hinder his ability to buy essential in-game items like weapons and armor. Therefore, it's crucial to maintain a good relationship with other players. Instead of listening to Earth's advice, the guy challenges him to a duel to prove he's superior to a mere archer. Zwei tells Earth not to accept the challenge, but he's not willing to run away from the fight and let an aggressive player like that come out on top. So Earth accepts the duel and decides to take advantage of the player's confidence to spot his weaknesses. As soon as the fight begins, the player attacks with his sword, but Earth dodges the blow and launches a kick, followed by 2 arrows, ending the duel rather quickly. Immediately, his friends flee with the unconscious player, and everyone celebrates Earth's victory. Seeing his potential, Zwei and Millie decide to invite Earth to join their group. Then, after notifying all the players that he will continue to make potions the next day, Earth logs out of the game. He thinks about how the group of Mohawks should be shunned by production players due to their unnecessary attitude. As soon as he leaves his room, Zwei sends him a message, asking if Earth is interested in forming a group. A few days after the incident with the lack of potions, the herbalist skill was revived in the game. After all, it had become a useful skill due to the item limit imposed on NPC sales. And so the protagonist started the game as usual, but this would be the first day that Earth would be part of a group in that world, joining Zwei's team called Blue. Since Earth only knew Zwei and Millie from the group, the other members introduced themselves to him. One of them was a girl named Nora, who claimed to be skilled in melee combat due to her sword. Next, he met Rage, a tank wielding an axe and shield responsible for drawing enemy attacks. Finally, Earth met Casimine, a one-handed swordsman. After getting to know everyone, Earth began to introduce himself. However, everyone already knew he was an archer, and Zwei explained that he had become quite famous among players after winning the duel against the Mohawk guy. So he skipped the introductions but asked if the group was indeed balanced since they had 4 frontline members, Millie as a magic user and himself as an archer. The group explained that Millie could use magic with various attributes including damage dealing, and that Nora could also use healing magic, providing support during melee combat. They explained that they were determined to hunt a wild bear, even though it was a very tough enemy in the game. Earth couldn't help but wonder where all this confidence came from. He mentioned it would be his first time hunting a bear and expressed his concerns, as the bear was known to be fast and intelligent. But no one seemed willing to back down from the challenge, agreeing to go for the hunt and then enjoy a delicious meal prepared by Earth. And so the archer participated in his first team hunt. He used his long-range vision to analyze the nearby enemies, noticing that all the wild bears were traveling in groups. Eventually, he found one that was alone. With the target located, they decided to lure the bear to a more advantageous location for their fight. The blue team recognized that Earth had just joined, that he was already being helpful. Millie cast a spell on Zwei, and Earth explained that he would move away to use his concealment skill. They sprang into action, with Earth firing his first arrow. However, this only enraged the wild bear. Rage performed his role, drawing the enemy's attention. In the game's battle mechanics, there was a hidden parameter called Hate, where the monster demonstrated its anger and rage. A high defense tank attracted all the hate to protect the other players. While Earth moved to a safe distance to keep the creature in his sights, Rage still took some damage from the bear, as it was a formidable foe. However, Millie promptly aided him with her healing magic. Nora asked him to keep the bear's attention on her for attacking, but they soon realized that the monster's hide was tough and resistant to their weapons. Even Nora and the others found it challenging to pierce through. Millie's magic finally dealt some damage to the creature. The battle continued, with Rage maintaining the bear's focus on him, while Nora provided healing support to mitigate the damage. However, the group started to realize that they might have rushed into confronting such a powerful enemy. Their weapons had limited effect on the bear, and Nora was running low on MP for healing. Earth understood that the team needed a quick and precise decision. He decided to trust his 38 years of life experience and aim for the bear's forehead, hoping it might be a weak spot, determined to help his team. Earth's arrow hit the bear, but it only made the bear angrier, and they all began to worry that they might not survive this hunt. However, Earth hoped that the arrow had failed because it was too shallow and decided to use his last resort. He activated a spell he acquired at level 15 of wind magic, needing to act quickly since it only lasts for 10 seconds. With this, Earth significantly increases his speed, intensifying his kicking power to push the arrow and pierce the bear's forehead. Next, Zwei shouts for Millie to attack, and she once again casts her magic, allowing the team to finally succeed in that hunt and put an end to the wild bear. Zwei apologizes for suggesting they go after a wild bear, acknowledging that it wasn't a good decision. However, Earth says that everything turned out well, and now it's time for them to enjoy the new dish he prepared, which excites them all. And so, they all enjoy a wolf skewer, savoring the seasonings that Earth used to prepare the meal. Zwei wonders why he's the only one not given a skewer, having to settle for a mere piece of bread. After teasing his friend for a bit, Earth finally admits he was just joking, giving Zwei a skewer and making him very happy. He savors the meat, enamored with the taste, and Nora asks Earth if the recipe for the food is expensive. He explains that in reality there's no way to obtain recipes through exchange because it's become a secret understanding among producers not to sell recipes. He mentions that first of all, it takes a lot of money and time to create a recipe, and secondly, even with a recipe, the result of the food can vary because it depends on the effort and ingenuity of the person who made it. For these reasons, the game's producers concluded that it's impossible to imitate the quality of other players' production. So since they can't buy Earth's meat skewer recipe, Zwei suggests they pay a low price for him to cook for their team, which irritates Earth as it's not right to place a value on someone else's work, but it makes the rest of the team very happy. At the end of the day, Earth adds the other members of the group as friends and continues the rest of his journey alone, hunting other enemies and expanding the game's area by heading to the forest of the 5th area. There, he encounters new monsters like giant insects. He tries to hit one of them with his bow but ends up missing and hitting an ant instead, leaving it agitated. This is a swift ant with a connection ability, and quickly, it calls his fellow ants. Even though he's in trouble, Earth decides to fight using his kicks. However, he discovers that these insects have a retaliation damage effect, which makes his body numb. After receiving a lot of attacks from the ants, Earth ends up dying and is automatically transported back to the city. Upon arriving there, he receives a game notification informing all players that they will soon have a major update called the Fairy Dance, which will introduce new skills and arts, expand production possibilities, and give each player a fairy to assist in battles and other tasks. Earth realizes it's not a good time to receive a death penalty, as soon everyone will be leveling up with this update. He trains hard to acquire the blacksmithing skill, which will allow him to improve his attacks and craft a more efficient arrow against the swift ant. After some work, Earth manages to create an iron arrow with a triangular shape, with an attack power of 6, and after a few adjustments, he finalizes it with an apple-shaped tip, increasing the arrow's attack power to 8. Next, he decides to create equipment to enhance his kicking power because besides being a weak attack, it's not effective against enemies that can deal retaliation damage. After some thought, Earth decides to add spikes to the soles of his shoes and blades on the sides. As he works on his new gear, another player named Black asks what he's doing. After some time, both of them see the final result, and Black admits he's never seen a kick assist item like that. Other players also admire the creative shoe weapon. Then Earth goes to buy a bowstring from Myun, who finds his new shoes rather eerie for a cook. Afterward, he searches for a new bow, aiming to upgrade it now that he's reached level 30 in that skill. He evaluates his 3 options, first considering the short bow, which is easy to use but has limited range, which he dismisses as he's not good in close-range fights. Then he looks at the long bow, which offers more range and power but takes a long time to draw, which isn't suitable for solo play. This leaves Earth with the hunting bow, which has good size and shooting range. He specializes in this advanced skill, reaching level 1. With everything prepared, Earth names his new weapon the Hunting Composite Bow X, and when he tests it, he notices the improvement in his weapon, bidding farewell to the old one, which despite being inferior to the current one, had been useful to him until that point. Now that he has improved, he goes in search of a swift ant. Combining wind magic with the bow, he defeats the enemy with 2 shots. He continues hunting more insects, getting his revenge and collecting plenty of ant exoskeletons, which can be used to create lightweight armor. He takes the material to Myun, who is an armor craftswoman. Then the game announces that the fairy dance is about to begin, and the first part of that stage is each player receiving an auxiliary fairy. Earth receives his contract crystal, which contains his fairy. He hopes to get a wind-based one to complement his abilities. However, when he begins the ritual, the crystal shatters and no fairy appears, leaving him frustrated. At that moment, he receives a call from Zwei, asking him to meet up with the group. When he arrives, he shows the result of his crystal and asks if this happened to Zwei, but Zwei shows he has his fairy, as does everyone else, each of them having received a little companion. In other words, Earth is the only one without a fairy. To lift his spirits, Millie tells him not to give up as they're only in the first part of the mission. And since his crystal hasn't disappeared, there must be another chance for him to make the contract. She believes that there's probably something in the second part of the mission, which encourages Earth to remain hopeful. However, they don't understand why their fairies liked him so much and are a bit jealous of it. Earth finds them all very cute and hopes he can get his own fairies soon. A few days later, Earth continued to attract the fairies to him even without having his own fairy, as his contract crystal had broken. He played with one of the fairies and after a while decided to take a look at his profile. There, he saw that his skills had improved, now allowing him to acquire superior abilities for even more ways to fight. Next, Earth embarked on his first dungeon exploration. He walked through the darkness of the cave, reminiscing about exploring places like that when he was a child, having fun knowing he could relive this experience thanks to the game. However, now it was even more thrilling. Suddenly, in a darker section, Earth encountered a giant spider. He shot an arrow at the creature and then unleashed several wind magic attacks, but the spider resisted. He then attempted to strike but accidentally hit his head on the cave ceiling. Nevertheless, he recovered quickly and snared the spider with a rope and delivered a kick, managing to defeat it. He celebrated the victory, though his head still throbbed from the impact. At that moment, several dark fairies appeared and Earth realized they wanted him to follow them. So Earth followed the fairies using a new ability called Gravity Center Stabilization, allowing him to traverse the path without stumbling. Later, he realized he had finally arrived at the place they desired as all the fairies were gathered in one spot. Upon looking where they were, Earth moved a stone that was in the way, revealing a secret door with a chest behind it. He was excited to be in the exploration phase of the game and, upon opening the chest, found an ancient ring. Despite not knowing its purpose, Earth decided to keep it. He thanked the fairies for helping him find the item just as he received a game notification announcing the second part of the fairy dance would finally be revealed. Earth headed to the city, where the game announced that the name of this second part of the event was Battle with the Fairies. After participating in battles and PvP fights, fairies would be able to evolve and take on new forms. The game emphasized that this would only happen if players battled with different people, providing an excellent opportunity for them to get to know other players. Additionally, the top 16 in the PvP would be invited to the tournament, with special prizes for the winners. Another update included titles and distinctions that players would receive based on their gameplay style. The game also informed players like Earth who hadn't acquired fairies could restore their contract crystals through special PvP, not only guaranteeing success, but also offering a higher chance of obtaining a rare fairy. The game also stated that from now on, fairies would have self-identity, leading to changes in their behavior. After the announcement, all players began discussing the news as there were many changes to digest. Earth noticed that players were excited about the changes, but he feared that players might start bothering the artisans who didn't enjoy PvP. However, later he met Black, who explained that it wouldn't be a problem for them as all the artisans agreed that any player who bothered them or tried to force a fight should be reported to everyone. In other words, it would be left in peace because no player was foolish enough to become an enemy of an entire guild. Black then asked Earth if he had visited the newly discovered city. The city was named Nexia and had a teleportation portal, so players could come and go as they pleased. Black explained that serious PvP players were gathering there to battle, and Earth asked if Black would participate. However, he replied that being an artisan suited him better, and he would leave the fighting to other players. Earth realized that there were indeed many ways to enjoy an event like this and contemplated how he would make the most of it. The next day, Earth decided to check the additional titles he had received. This caught the attention of other players as they were all expecting Earth to receive a rare title. He discovered he had been awarded the title Fairy Charmer, which made all the fairies love him, explaining a lot. Earth didn't particularly like his title because it drew a lot of attention, but he could only remove it by participating in a special PvP during the event. Because of this, Earth asked if anyone would be willing to fight him. A girl named Rona heard his request and sent him a fight invitation. She had heard of Earth before because she was also part of the blue group Zwei's guild. Rona mentioned that she had always wanted to talk to him as he fought with kicks and she was skilled in martial arts. Earth thanked Rona for agreeing to fight him, but suddenly his fairy, a bird, flew to his shoulder. Rona found this strange because the bird was usually very timid. However, it had taken such a liking to Earth that it refused to fight him, proving to everyone that he was indeed a fairy charmer. This made Rona jealous as her fairy had never shown any affection to her and had already warmed up to Earth, while he became even more desperate to fight someone. Unfortunately, this situation repeated itself several times, with all the fairies refusing to battle him. Later, Rona called Earth to ask for a favor, and Earth quickly guessed what she wanted. The girl wanted Earth to cook something for her fairy to eat because it wasn't eating properly, just like the fairies of dozens of other players who wanted the same. It all began when Earth met a player who had trouble feeding his fairy with the bread sold by NPCs, as the bread was genuinely bad. The player asked him to cook something for his fairy, as if Earth could make something as delicious as his steak. He could also cook tasty food for the fairies. Because Earth agreed to help, the news spread, and now he had to cook for a line of people, even limiting them to 3 cakes each. After some time, his service slowed down and he managed to complete all the orders, thanks to Rona, who helped by finding other cooks to prepare fairy food. She then asked Earth what he was planning to do now that his service had finished, and Earth replied that he had been cooking for a long time, so he wanted to do something different. Rona invited Earth to go to the new city with her. The two of them used the portal to quickly reach Nexia, where they immediately saw an area where PvP battles were taking place and decided to watch. One of the players in the battle had a bird fairy like Rona, while the other had a wolf. Earth and Rona noticed that the wolf was behaving strangely. As the battle began, the two players faced off, but when the owner of the wolf fairy asked it to attack, the creature refused to obey. Taking advantage of this, the opponent attacked with the help of his fairy and won the battle. Earth then understood what was happening. He explained to Rona that the wolf player was a fairy abuser, which is what players were calling those who use fairies abusively, such as hitting or speaking rudely to them, causing them to stop following commands. The player became quite angry with the wolf, shouting aggressively at it. Earth thought the situation would escalate because he recalled a video he had seen where a fairy abuser had mistreated his fairy so much that, as a penalty, she evolved drastically and the game forced a battle between them, after which the player lost his contract with the fairy. However, the wolf player managed to control his anger, and Earth deduced that he knew what would happen if he lost his temper. Rona said she didn't know anything about this. Earth explained that penalties like this were common in older games, and even though modern games were gentler with players, this one opted for a more old-school approach. Earth thought he had played enough for the day and said goodbye to Rona. The girl thanked him again for the food for her fairy. After bidding her farewell, he disconnected from the game. He thought about how some players took great care of their fairies like Rona, while others, for some reason, chose to treat them violently. However, it was a matter of personal choice. But when Earth returned to the game the next day, he was surprised because the player with the wolf fairy appeared to seek his help, given Earth's title as a fairy charmer. He asked for advice on how to reconcile with the wolf since Earth had seen the video of the player attacked by his fairy after she reached her limit, and he didn't want the same to happen to him. While the wolf licked his face, Earth asked why the player had treated him poorly. The player explained that he didn't know how to behave with fairies and had watched videos of other players. However, all the videos showed them treating fairies like circus animals. So he thought he had to follow the same path as those players, but realized his mistake when the second phase of the update brought about a change in fairy behavior. He revealed that after that, the fairy stopped listening to him, and in an attempt to regain her obedience, he ended up hitting her several times, which only made the situation worse. The player admitted that he shouldn't have acted that way and pleaded with Earth to help him find a solution, even offering to pay for his assistance. However, Earth said he didn't want anything in return to avoid making it a habit. Earth told the player that he just had to treat his fairy well, taking care of her like a friend, and advised him to do everything together with his fairy, including resting, eating, and fighting, always thanking her for her assistance. He said that when the player started taking care of his fairy, she would become obedient again. Then the player remembered that Earth was a cook who made fairy food and asked him to make something for his wolf to win the fairy over with food. Earth agreed to help. Earth prepared some horned rabbit Kara-age for the wolf. Once it was ready, the player took one and approached his fairy with trepidation as she wasn't pleased with him at all. However, after sniffing the snack for a while, the fairy decided to eat it, giving the player an opportunity to get closer. As a result, the fairy began to trust him again, and the player was moved to have finally won back his fairy. He thanked Earth for his help. The boy was happy to have assisted and started to accept his title better. However, as he bid them farewell, a man named Silver called out to Earth. He introduced himself as Silver and asked to talk to him privately, away from prying ears. During the night, Earth decides to visit an isolated cabin to have a private conversation with Silver. Earth notices that all of Silver's equipment is top-notch and concludes that he must be one of the best-ranked players currently and a hardcore gamer who invests many hours in the game. Silver then sits down and tells Earth he'll be straightforward, asking if he has seen a man named Glad. Earth thinks for a few seconds but says he hasn't seen anyone by that name. Silver relaxes a bit and says that Glad would be after the player who holds the title of Fairy Enthrallor, a title that Earth possesses. Earth then asks Silver who this Glad is, and Silver responds that he used to be a permanent member of his group, a player with behavior issues, but because he was a highly skilled tank, he had a spot in the group. Earth recognizes that if Silver is talking about this in the past tense, it means Glad is no longer part of the group. Silver explains that Glad became too arrogant and started belittling other players. But things got worse at the start of the fairy event, as Glad was the only one in his group who couldn't make a contract with a fairy, just like Earth. This led Glad to become frustrated and vent his anger on everyone, and as Silver was the group leader, his only choice was to banish Glad. Silver then summons his fairy to continue the conversation. He made a contract with a Valkyrie of Light fairy who is extremely strong and had a perfect humanoid form. Silver continues the story saying that everything he tried to do to console Glad only made him angrier until finally in the last game update, Glad obtained another crystal, allowing him to make a contract with a fairy known as the Dark Fox. Since then, Glad has been challenging various players to special PvP matches whenever he can. Earth realizes that even with a fairy, Glad still feels humiliated, and that's why he's doing this. Silver agrees, saying that Glad probably wants to demonstrate his power in the championship that will take place on the last day of the fairy event, warning Earth once again to be careful not to get involved with him. Earth thanks Silver for the warning, and Silver says he'll have to deal with Glad during the championship. Silver leaves with his fairy, leaving Earth thinking that it's dangerous to believe a story when you only know one side of it, but he decides it's better to be cautious. He then decides to go monster hunting because this way he can continue playing safely. In the game's terms, it's against the rules for one player to challenge another to a PvP match while the other player is fighting monsters. So even if Glad is really after him, Earth can stay safe by hunting monsters. He uses his bow to shoot an arrow in the forehead of a wild bear, but it doesn't bring the animal down immediately, only making it angry. As the bear charges toward Earth, he decides to use his new technique called Mirror Arrow, which allows him to create 2 copies of himself, making all 3 shoot simultaneously, effectively delivering 3 attacks at once. However, the bear remains alive, prompting Earth to use his whip to entangle its legs and pull it to the ground. Earth then finishes off the opponent with a powerful kick. After the fight, he realizes how challenging it is to take down a bear alone, but he decides to continue with this strategy. Earth earns enough points to improve his skills and decides to enhance his kick, learning a new technique called Sliding Charge, which allows him to strike the enemy with a charge or quickly escape danger. This is his first kicking technique. Next, Earth decides to search for minerals in the mines near the Nexia region to gather high-quality materials for making steel or lightweight metal to improve his equipment. During his mining work, he accidentally hits an explosive ore nugget. He quickly warns those nearby to take cover, while carefully storing the explosive metal. After resolving the issue, Earth apologizes to the other players who thank him for alerting them and preventing a massive explosion that could have caused significant damage. With the ores in hand, Earth goes to Black and asks to borrow his forge. He spends the entire night crafting a twisted arrowhead from the bear leather he acquired. After many hours of work, he finally creates an arrowhead that can cause bleeding when it hits the target. With the remaining metal, he decides to make a flexible steel whip that can also inflict bleeding effects. The next day, Earth goes to the processing room basement, where he conducts experiments with the explosive ore he found, even though it involves a field of knowledge that is not his expertise. However, he feels safe in that room, knowing that he won't risk anyone's life if something goes wrong. This allows him to experiment freely using his herbalism skill. In the end, Earth manages to create 3 mixtures, A, B, and C. He then goes to a remote area to test the strength of the explosions, tossing the first vial with mixture A, which breaks on the ground without causing any significant explosion. Earth then throws the vial with mixture B, and it results in a massive explosion, destroying a considerable area and depleting 80% of Earth's health. He decides to keep this mixture for extreme situations when he might need to sacrifice himself to defeat a monster and names it Infernal Mine Oil. Due to the damage he sustains, Earth needs to consume a healing potion. He proceeds to throw the last vial with mixture C, which causes a mild explosion, exactly what Earth was looking for. He names this mixture Fortified Oil. Next, Earth heads to the field to test his new mixture. There, he encounters a group of 3 wild bears. He begins the battle by using the fortified oil on the creatures, and then attacks with his arrows, wind magic, and steel whip. This makes the battle much easier, allowing him to defeat the 3 bears quickly and effectively. However, Earth acknowledges that he shouldn't rely on consumable items too much, as it won't improve his skills. He reaches level 50, the Hunting Bow and Wind Magic, gaining 2 new abilities, Gatling Arrow and Fly. These abilities unlock another secret skill called Wind Bow, which combines the skills of the Bow and Wind Magic. Choosing this skill would prevent Earth from acquiring advanced skills in both Hunting Bow and Wind Magic, but he decides to take this new skill. Later, Earth tests his 2 new abilities and finds that Gatling Arrow allows him to shoot in rapid succession. Although he can only fire twice in his current level, Fly enables him to use wind support magic, allowing him to jump high. Afterward, Earth takes his hunting materials to the city and orders a cloak made from the bear leather he acquired. Suddenly, an announcement for players is displayed stating that the PvP Championship for the Fairy event has selected its participants based on score calculations. At this moment, Sway and Millie appear and comment that none of them in their group likely made it to the top 16 participants, as none of them focused much on PvP battles. The game provides the list of selected players, and the 3 realize that 2 players stood out for their numerous victories, Silver and Glad. Earth is concerned about the relationship between the 2, but is also eager to watch them fight. Several players gather at the championship server to watch the battles. From the arena stands, Earth, Zwei, and Millie eagerly await the matches. Earth uses his special vision skill and spots 2 other players with the same Fairy Enthraller title, which eases his mind, knowing he's not the only one with that title. The battles begin, and Earth notices that the winning fairies are absorbing the energy of the defeated ones, something that doesn't occur in regular PvP battles. Finally, the highly anticipated moment of the final battle arrives. Silver and Glad step into the arena to face each other. Earth, who had anticipated the showdown, watches with keen interest. Inside the ring, Silver tells Glad that he felt the need to correct him for his mistakes, and the only way to do that was by defeating him. Glad doesn't back down, but instead becomes excited and prepares to fight. The battle commences, and Silver quickly advances with his axe toward Glad, who responds by saying he was already familiar with Silver's tactics. Thanks to the numerous times he had watched Silver fight, he knew that Silver's strategy was to charge at the enemy with his axe to try to destabilize his opponent. However, the trick doesn't work, and Glad counterattacks, while his Dark Fox Fairy battles Silver's Valkyrie of Light Fairy on equal footing. Silver sees an opening and attempts to strike Glad with his Moon Crescent move, but Glad swiftly slides backward using Wind Boost, the wind magic skill, surprising Earth because he didn't know that Glad was a wind magic user. Glad takes advantage of Silver being airborne due to the missed attack and delivers a powerful blow followed by a strong attack from his Dark Fox Fairy, ultimately making Glad the champion of the competition. By absorbing the energy of Silver's Valkyrie, the Dark Fox evolves into a humanoid fox. She explains that the purpose of the event was to select the next fairy ruler. The fairies received a prophecy that the king must be strong and understand the art of war, something that wasn't a common trait among fairies, as they are peaceful creatures. So they joined forces with humans who are masters of warfare to gain that experience, allowing the fox fairy to acquire the necessary knowledge to become the ruler. Glad asks if she will discard him now that she no longer needs him. She replies that the other fairies won't distance themselves from him, but she will, as their contract is now over. Since all Glad wanted was to use the fairy as a tool for revenge, she used him to win the championship. However, she offers Glad a reward of money and a bonus, as well as the opportunity to contract with a fairy as strong as she was before evolving. Glad declines the proposal and challenges the fox fairy to a fight. She accepts, saying that if he wins, she will obey him again, but if he loses, he won't receive the money or the bonus. They begin the battle, but Glad quickly gets pummeled, proving that the fox is now on a level far above what he can handle. After winning, the fox fairy states that 3 people deserve a reward, bringing Earth and the other 2 players with the same title as him to her. She explains that the 2 others were the only ones who refused to fight using their fairies. As a reward, she allows their fairies to evolve. For Earth, who didn't have a fairy, she presents a different offer. She tells him he can fight her once, leaving Earth entirely confused about whether he liked his reward or not. Now that only Earth remains, the fairy queen suggests that he battles her right there in the combat arena. The boy becomes confused, and the fairy says that since he's been at the event the whole time without a fairy, she would like to ensure a better reward. So they would fight, and regardless of the outcome, she would donate some of her powers. Earth accepts the challenge, and everyone in the arena eagerly awaits this fight. He prepares for the battle by organizing his items and planning the best way to win. It wouldn't be easy, as was evident in the previous fight. The fairy queen has mastery over very powerful magics like the high explosion. He has a slight advantage because he has already seen her fighting style, and she probably has never fought an archer before. However, that wouldn't be enough due to his poor abilities. Besides, he couldn't prolong the fight as the fairy could adapt quickly. Thus, he comes to the conclusion that the only way to win would be to play dirty. The fairy asks if he's ready, and he responds in the affirmative. The combat begins, and the blue dome of the arena rises. As soon as the clock marks the start, Archer moves and uses his sliding charge to distance himself from the opponent. Already at a reasonable distance, he uses his bow to shoot an arrow with 70% of its strength, just to initiate and test the Fairy Queen's abilities. When he fires, the fairy uses Winter Cutter to cancel the archer's attack and neutralize the arrow's strength. He thinks that maybe if he uses full force, he can hit her, but without much time to think, the fairy launches the Fire Lance, and Earth needs to dodge this attack made of fire arrows coming from above. While he dodges, he shoots an arrow that pierces the fairy's attack and hits her squarely in the shoulder, nullifying her magic. In the stands, his friends watch this excitedly and are impressed by Earth's speed and power. The Fairy Queen realizes that continuing the fight at that distance would be very disadvantageous for her. She then uses her Wind Booster ability to advance at high speed towards Earth to get closer to her opponent. However, the fairy didn't anticipate that the archer was already expecting this move, as he had seen it in the fight against Glad. So when the fairy is about to launch her shock, Earth quickly dodges horizontally and breaks one of his vials in the air with a death potion. This potion, made from asphyxiation herb, produces a toxic purple mist that hinders the fairy and prevents her from casting any magic. With this, Earth gains time to throw more explosive potions. The fairy recognizes that not restricting the use of items was a mistake, and Earth states that weak humans like him need to think carefully about how to defeat someone much stronger. She then conjures the Earth Wall ability to protect herself from any threats, but she also can't attack. Earth disappears, and his friends notice that he has used his consummate ability. Inside her stone defense, the fairy waits for Earth's attack, but he remains still. She can't even feel his presence and imagines he's waiting for her magic to run out. So to surprise her, the fairy decides to make the attacking move. As soon as her magic ends and she's exposed again in the arena, she strikes with her ready wand but doesn't see anyone. Unaware, Earth appears behind her and restrains her using his steel whip. The archer then initiates his sequence of attacks, starting with sliding charge to destabilize her, going directly for her legs and knocking the bound fairy down. He then uses his Gatling arrow ability, landing a perfect combo of 6 arrows, causing a stun. Without rest, he launches Mirror Arrow, and with the help of 2 other summoned clones, they perform a triple attack that adds to the previous combo, now totaling 9. Next, he uses Twin Fanged Arrow, hitting the fairy more times and increasing his combo to 12. To finish, he uses Fly to gain altitude and conclude his attack with Wind Boost, boosting the damage from all of his previous attacks. In disbelief, the Fairy Queen is defeated and Earth emerges as the victor. Everyone in the arena who was watching the fight applauds the archer. He is surprised because he had almost forgotten that he was being watched by so many people. His plan to go unnoticed in the game was not going well, so he considers fleeing. However, the fairy congratulates Earth and acknowledges that her overconfidence led her to underestimate the boy. After the fight, she learned an important lesson. Since Earth won, it's time for his reward. The fairy asks him to hand over his broken contract crystal and the base for the Fairy King ring. He is confused about the ring but remembers it's the item he found earlier. As the Fairy Queen takes the crystal, she notices that there are already 5 lights inside it, showing how truly special Earth was. As his personal gift, the fairy grants 1 more light, making it 6 in the crystal. She then merges the 2 into a ring with a green stone. She tries to put the ring on Earth's left ring finger, but he resists and asks her to be gentle. The fairy asks what the problem is, and he questions why she's putting a ring on his engagement finger, not wanting this supposed marriage. The fairy insists, and they get into a hand battle until she gets tired and uses her firearm power, gaining strength and finally forcing the ring onto Earth's finger. He complains that it's not fair, but she doesn't care. She asks him to take care of it, while he struggles to remove the jewel that won't come off at all. When he looks at the stats, he discovers that it's the ring of the 87th Fairy Queen, a unique item in the world that contains the power of 6 elemental fairies. Whoever wears it can access the fairy realm, and to Earth's dismay, it cannot be unequipped. The fairy then bids farewell to everyone and returns to her realm, disappearing from the arena. Everyone applauds, thoroughly pleased with the event, praising how much fun it was, with a touch of romantic comedy at the end. And so the first major event of One More Free Life Online, Dance with the Fairies, comes to an end. After the event, some things changed in that world. Earth's battle with the Fairy Queen was featured on the game's official website and became very popular, altering the way players perceived wind and bow magic from then on. Because of this, many players became inspired to use this style of play. Despite his efforts to avoid it, Earth became known. Because of this, he decided to avoid drawing even more attention to himself and started enjoying his game in secrecy. However, there was one company he couldn't evade. Using the power of the ring, the Fairy Queen appeared in the middle of Earth's gameplay, using the ring as a portal. She said she can give a lot of love to Earth since he was so lonely without any fairies. He got angry and hit the fairy on the head with a fan, asking her to return to her kingdom and let him play alone. She complained that being a queen was very tough and that she wanted some time to relax. It seems like his peaceful gaming days were over. Earth walked through the village and everyone noticed him, commenting on things like him being the Fairy Queen's husband and his clothes. Amidst this, a man tried to get Earth's attention, but he ignored him, fearing that he might want to intimidate him. The man insisted that the archer look at him, but Earth continued on his way without averting his gaze. He felt very tense in the city, so he thought it was better to go hunting. Earlier, Earth had asked the Fairy Queen to explain how Prism Nova magic worked, an ability only those with the ring could use. She replied that he would have to discover the proof himself. In a forest, he captured a bear with his steel whip and invoked the magic, asking the fairies to fulfill his wish. During the incantation, he offered some of his mana to the fairy governess so that she would grant him the power. A circle defining the area of effect appeared, and he placed the bear right in the center. Then he finally activated his Prism Nova enchantment, creating a ball of light over the marked area, hitting the target and transforming everything inside. He tested the enchantment several times on other bears and found that this ability had a random effect. Later, while Earth was cooking, the fairy confirmed that many status effects could occur, with the rarest being paralysis and petrification. Moreover, the cooldown time was long, so he needed to be careful. The fairy looked at one of the delicious dishes Earth was cooking and tried to take a bite, but he smacked her head with a fan again, saying they were for sale. The Fairy Queen asked him to let her eat, as the fairy realm's food was all sweet, and she would like to taste other things. She threw a tantrum and complained about the duties of being a queen, sometimes wishing it were different. And the man that Earth had ignored earlier in the village appeared, and he was angry with Earth for not talking to him. He introduced himself as Nazar, a member of the Apollo's Bow Guild. He and the other members were working towards a grand goal, the salvation of oppressed archers. He believed that Earth suffered because he was excluded and not part of any guild, but Earth didn't care and even got distracted while arranging his cooking equipment. Nazar, full of pride and conviction, offered Earth a spot in his guild, saying he could join at the lowest rank. Earth finished gathering his equipment and thanked him for the invitation, but declined and left with the fairy, leaving Nazar baffled. The two arrived in the city and set up a stall to sell the food Earth had prepared. The fairy didn't want to leave, and Earth decided she could take the food as long as she left him in peace for the rest of the day. She was pleased and he transferred the food, so she returned to the fairy realm. The next day, he went to the blacksmiths and found a group of apprentices. He asked Blacks, who explained that now that he was a prominent player, everyone wanted to watch him work on their weapons. Since there was no other choice, he agreed to let everyone watch. First, Earth improved his hunting composite bow in X. He He replaced the worn-out bow and switched to higher quality wood for materials. For reinforcement, he used lightweight metal instead of iron. For his blade-tipped shoes, he also changed the material to lightweight metal to increase defense and stability when landing on the ground. To make the spikes, he used the twist he had learned from making arrows, thus increasing his attack power. Finally, the most important change. The blades. Instead of putting them on the sides, he adapted them to the front of the shoes so that his kicks caused damage from the front and with the sole. Moreover, they were now removable, making it easier to switch them. After the changes, he tested and demonstrated them in front of everyone and received a lot of applause. Everyone seemed impressed with his skills. However, instead of being happy, he thought it would be better if everyone thought he had done something weird. Earth then went to a merchant to buy the last item, a bear fur cape. He was impressed by the high item score. Since he had provided the material, the merchant charged a low price as promised. He thanked her since the cape was worth much more. Then, a message from the Apollo's Bow Guild master, I Am, arrived for Earth. Later, he met all the members of the group. I Am introduced herself and said they were very pleased to meet him. Earth asked what the matter was today, and I Am apologized for the trouble caused by Nazar earlier. She explained that after his battle with the Fairy Queen, there was not a player and one more who didn't know him. Therefore, their archer guild would benefit from his inclusion. This was what Nazar thought. They had also discovered that he was using the name Earth without permission to recruit new players. Everyone, again, apologized on Nazar's behalf. Earth accepted the apologies and asked everyone to hold their heads high. Aya informed him that a penalty had already been applied and Nazar was demoted from lieutenant to a regular member. He could no longer invite new people to the guild. Earth was understanding, and the two of them got along without any problems. Ayame was very pleased, and to conclude, she praised the battle against the Fairy Queen. She said he was the hope for many archers and asked him to continue like this as everyone had high expectations. Earth bid farewell a bit frustrated as that match hadn't had the effect he wanted. He just wanted to relax and enjoy the game peacefully, but now everyone knew him. Registrations for the second round of players are now open. Our protagonist notices that they are allowing the same number of players as the existing ones and deduces that the new servers have already been installed. Furthermore, he's heard that the lack of VR and headsets has been resolved, which means that registrations won't remain open for long. Inside the game, Sway and Millie encounter Earth and ask how he's going to deal with the break arms, a new status effect added in the patch from the previous day. Earth is worried because if he were hit by this ability, he'd be unable to wield his weapon for a while. Moreover, the effect would also trigger if he received more than 25% of his total HP in arm damage. Earth thinks that at least other players can't steal his dropped weapon. He had played another game before and someone stole a rare weapon he dropped after dying. Then the game announces a new update for all players. A new dungeon is coming and its name is A Challenge of the Departed. The place is generated entirely randomly, so every time a player enters, it will be a completely new experience equipped with all kinds of traps waiting for unlucky players. Additionally, there's a 1-hour time limit, and the main objective is to reach the 10th floor. Earth is excited about the challenge of a randomly generated dungeon. The game presents a preview trailer for the second round of player registrations. In this trailer, Zwei appears very happy and Earth during his battle against the Fairy Queen. However, Earth isn't very pleased with his appearance in the trailer because if new players think bows are strong weapons, they'll regret it later in the game. Later, Earth wants to be prepared for the dungeon challenge, but for that, he'll need a shield. He won't be able to advance further in the game if his only defense is evasion, especially in a cramped dungeon with no room to move freely. So he battles various creatures to specialize his shield skill, which also makes it easier to use his bow. Thanks to this, he can collect materials at the same time. After defeating some monsters, he goes to the blacksmith to craft new equipment. Blax asks what he's doing, and Earth replies that he intends to make a new bow using some designs he brought from the real world. One of these designs is for a high attack bow even with a low score, but Earth doesn't intend to use it because its arrows are too expensive. He created it just to learn more about how it works, as he plans to design an even better, non-existent bow. After many sleepless nights, Earth finally completes his project and creates a secret light metal shield, using exoskeletons from the ant soldiers on the sides to reinforce it and also protect the parts of his compound bow he placed at the back. As a result, the shield has a secret mechanism that transforms it into a bow. To switch between functions, he just needs to use the handle. Now, even if Earth is hit by the break arms, he won't immediately lose his long-range attack capability. On another day, the new update is available for installation. Because of this, the game is filled with players all excited about the major update. Many vendors sell potions to help with gameplay. Earth can't wait to take a look at the new dungeon. Suddenly, a group of 5 colorful warriors arrives to speak with Earth. Each one introduces themselves by a specific color and names themselves the gang of the 6 Rangers. Earth is perplexed because this seems like a blatant copy of the Sentai Rangers. However, he notices there are only 5 of them and asks where the black one is. The Red Ranger responds that he had a stomachache, and Earth doesn't seem to believe that these guys are actual Rangers, but he decides to ignore it. Then Red says they were looking for another member to complete the group and found Earth, so he invites him to join them in the dungeon challenge. Earth considers the help, as it would be impossible to go very far alone. Thus, he accepts, and they venture together. In the dungeon, the Rangers are ready to proceed, but Earth tells them to wait. He uses his threat detection ability, and as he suspected, the place is full of traps. In that room, there are 15 traps, and 4 of them are instant death traps. Earth mentions that it's common for heroes to fall into these traps, and to prevent everyone from being caught, he goes ahead and asks them to follow his exact steps. The Blue Ranger comments to the Pink Ranger that Red made the right decision by inviting Earth, even though he was concerned about adding another member to the group. Upon hearing this, Earth is pleased and surprised that they made that decision. In reality, Red remarks that they were lucky to meet the guy who married the Fairy Queen because he couldn't possibly be weak. The group navigates through the traps, and Red says that from there he can take over the leadership. They proceed and encounter some skeleton soldiers. Red says the 5 members will defeat these enemies. They engage in combat with their weapons and defeat the skeletons without much trouble. Earth is impressed and understands why they call them heroes. Thus, he can focus on finding traps. They find the stairs to the 2nd floor, but are concerned about the time because it took 18 minutes to get there, which is quite a while in a 1-hour challenge. Earth apologizes and says he would like to disarm the traps faster, but it's very risky. The Rangers tell him not to worry because they know it's a tough job. They descend to the 2nd floor and encounter whites and skeleton soldiers on the way. The Pink Ranger asks to handle it and uses her glorious, lovely flash power to destroy the whites. However, those skeleton soldiers can dispel the spell, unlike the ones they faced on the previous floor. More whites appear. So they use their weapons and split into groups. Earth, Pink, and Blue will deal with the whites due to their magical attacks, and the rest will handle the soldiers attacking with physical damage. Thanks to the magic wind arrows, Earth manages to defeat some whites. After the battle, they find the path to the 4th floor. However, 40 minutes have passed since they spent a lot of time dealing with those challenging monsters. Therefore, there won't be time to reach the 10th floor. They decide to go to the 5th floor on that expedition. Further on, Earth enters a room and feels a terrible sensation as if the Reaper were caressing his face. Then they hear desperate screams from another group coming from the door. Before they can think about what to do, Red kicks the door open and enters quickly. The rest of the group follows, and when everyone enters, the door closes, revealing that it's a trap that will only open when they complete the room's mission. Inside, another group of warriors is struggling to face a legion of skeleton soldiers. Red orders the entire group to help. Earth is suspicious and uses his threat detection ability, but doesn't find anything. Thus, he's free to fight with all his strength. Then they all start battling. Earth uses his Gatling arrow and Aeolian dust arrow abilities to kill some whites. The Rangers with physical attack weapons hit the skeleton soldiers. Meanwhile, the magic-using Rangers use their healing abilities to assist the wounded warriors so they can return to the fight. In the end, they combine their attacks, creating a massive explosion and completing the room's mission. Consequently, all the doors open. The warriors thank Red for his help. Then the treasure chest in the room appears. One of the warriors is eager to open it, but Earth tries to convince him not to do it because he detected a trap. The warrior gets angry for not wanting to share the loot and claims that he also has theft skills, so he would have noticed a trap if there was one. Earth then tells them that they don't want the treasure and only asks the warrior to wait until they leave the room to open it. They exit, and the Rangers don't understand why Earth gave up on the treasure. He explains that the room had another trap, one that kills you with your own greed. Then the door closes, and they hear the screams of the warriors. Time runs out, and they return to the dungeon entrance. Outside, the Blue Ranger asks Earth a question. He wonders how Earth had noticed the 2nd trap on the treasure chest while the other warrior with theft skills didn't. Therefore, he asks if Earth has reached level 20. Earth doesn't give an exact number because it would be rude, but confirms that he's surpassed level 20. In reality, he has already surpassed level 30 but keeps it a secret. Yellow suggests sharing the earnings, even though the adventure didn't yield much. Earth says he's already satisfied with the increase in his theft skills. Red says that if he's satisfied, he's happy. However, Yellow wanted to explore the dungeon even more and reach the 10th floor. Green explains that because of the time that was very difficult and he prefers to thoroughly explore each level. He even shows a map he made of the 1st floor in its entirety. The rest of the group doubts the quality of the map a bit because he has difficulty with directions. Anyway, Green says that the map will be useless next time because the place is generated randomly. Red thanks Earth for his help and says he plans to introduce him to the Black Ranger, so he asks to send a friend request. Earth accepts and also expresses gratitude, and they shake hands. Later, at the blacksmith's, Earth tries to build a tool to disarm traps more quickly and reach the 10th floor of the dungeon. The problem is that if it's too thin, it will break easily, but when he tries to create a sturdier tool, it ends up being too thick. Black sees that the boy is struggling and decides to help. He asks to see the tool and makes some adjustments. When he hands it back to Earth, it's perfect. Earth returns happily with his tool, but is surprised by the sudden appearance of the Fairy Queen. He notices that she's wearing her complete outfit and asks why. She replies that she's going to distribute contract crystals to the new adventurers. With so many new players, this will be a long job, even with her human assistants, but she needs to deliver as many crystals as possible. She then bids farewell to Earth and says she'll meet her dear husband later. He gets angry and hits the fairy's head with his fan, reminding her that they're not married. Since the Fairy Queen is working so hard, Earth decides to do the same. So he cuts some wood and makes many arrows for his bow to use in the next attempt in the dungeon. Then he decides to cook, but the fairy returns. She's exhausted after so much work. She says that she got very angry because all the men wanted to know her measurements, what kind of boyfriend she likes, and her favorite food. Moreover, they asked strange questions like what she thought of fairs. When she mentioned that, the perverts had a creepy smile because they would actually enjoy that. Earth feels sorry for the fairy and she appeals to him for a bit of affection and asks him to sign a marriage form. She says that with that form, they will be officially married, but Earth goes crazy at the idea because he doesn't want to get married. So he decides to make a meat bun using his level 50 cooking skill. The fairy is very happy and rests her head on Earth's lap, and this time he decides to please her a little just for that day. After putting together a set of tools, Earth spends several days entering the dungeon alone, aiming to improve his lockpicking and trap disarming skills. In the beginning, Earth makes mistakes all the time, triggering traps, causing damage, and sometimes even losing his life. But after much practice and effort, Earth finally reaches level 50 in his thieving skill. With this achievement, he gains the option to evolve into a higher ranked skill. Earth evaluates his choices and discovers that he can evolve into Superior Theft, essentially a more powerful version of the theft skill, despite performing almost the same actions. His other option was to evolve into a skill called Benevolent Theft, allowing him to steal from monsters and get a bonus when stealthily attacking, things a normal thief couldn't do. However, this skill requires more experience to evolve. Still, Earth decides to go for Benevolent Theft as it seems to be the more enjoyable choice. After choosing his new skill, he receives a call from the Red Ranger. Earth had already met the gang of 6 Rangers, but he hadn't seen the Black Ranger yet. The two are introduced and the team gathers in the dungeon, where Earth quickly befriends the guy. The Red Ranger imagined that the two would get along, but he didn't expect them to bond so well. Earth clicks with the Black Ranger because both get equally excited about disarming traps. They get so enthusiastic that the other team members find their excitement strange. After meeting the heroes, Earth continues to explore the dungeon alone. He disarms more traps, increasing his success rate and leveling up his Benevolent Theft skill. Additionally, while exploring the dungeon, Earth gains a better understanding of how the monsters in the area function. They are attracted to light, so Earth discovers that by using his long-range vision ability, which allows him to see in the dark, he can significantly reduce the number of battles and sneak past monsters without being seen, avoiding unnecessary fights. Thanks to this discovery, Earth can move deeper into the dungeon, reaching the staircase to the penultimate level alone without needing any team assistance. However, he has just over 5 minutes to finish the dungeon due to the 1-hour time limit. Earth thinks that's a very short period to reach the end of the dungeon, knowing that the penultimate floor has liches. Still, he decides to take the risk and see how far he can go. Hurrying due to the time constraint, as soon as he reaches the floor, he encounters a lich. He's afraid of being seen, but fortunately, the monster doesn't spot him due to the lack of light. Some time ago, the Rangers warned Earth to be careful on the penultimate floor precisely because of those creatures. Liches can use status attacks and summon nearby monsters, causing significant problems, especially for a solo player like Earth. Because of this, he knew he couldn't face any of those monsters at all costs. Fortunately, his plan of not using light works, and Earth manages to pass through the entire floor without running into any troublesome monsters, reaching the end of that level. However, to get to the staircase leading to the last level, he needs to pass through thousands of traps, and unfortunately, he doesn't have time to disarm them all. Earth decides to take the risk and try to pass through the traps with his wind magic. He tries his best to land in the right spots, but despite all his efforts, he ends up stepping on one of the traps. Earth thinks it's his end but decides not to give up since he was so close to his goal. He quickly dodges all the traps and safely reaches the staircase to the last level. Upon reaching there, Earth is surprised that he wasn't kicked out of the dungeon since his time should have already ended. He checks his timer and discovers that he reached the last level with only 0.02 seconds left, and for some reason it stopped as soon as he entered the area. Earth then takes a healing potion to prepare for the journey ahead. After all, what mattered was that he had reached a level no other player had achieved so far, and Earth was determined to go all the way. He starts descending the thousands of stairs in that place, and after a while he hears a voice of a man coming out of nowhere. Earth wonders where it's coming from, and the man begins to say that he didn't expect anyone to reach that place alone. The stranger introduces himself as Andra, a knight of the Empire. Then he asks Earth to listen to his story while they descend the stairs. And so, Andra recounts that many years ago, his nation ordered him to investigate the labyrinth of the dungeon and seal it. Andra fulfilled the order and took a large army with him, but everyone lost their lives to the monsters and traps of the location. Andra continues the story, explaining that as the last survivor, he continued navigating the labyrinth alone until he reached a deep room. However, as soon as he entered it, he got trapped in a completely empty place with no air to breathe. He tells Earth that after that, he was transformed into a skeleton knight and forced to protect the dungeon, meaning Andra went to seal the labyrinth and ended up being transformed into its guardian. Earth then asks if the room still exists in the labyrinth, and Andra replies that he destroyed it, making Earth think that even with his tragic end, Andra tried to be a noble knight. The man reveals that he's waiting for Earth at the bottom of the stairs and that Earth must put an end to his life. Andra says he endured all this time, resisting his heart turning into that of a monster, but he's tired and wants to be free and reunite with his comrades. Suddenly, the stairs in the place start disappearing without any warning. Earth tries to escape but ends up falling into a long descent. Next, he encounters Andre, who had just succumbed to his skeleton knight form, no longer able to resist and losing his essence. Earth hits the skeleton knight with his arrows, but it only makes him angry. The two start fighting, and the skeleton quickly proves to be agile and strong. Still, Earth manages to evade his attacks, using his shield for protection and then attacking the skeleton with vials that cause flames in the area. He continues shooting arrows since he can't fight at close range without a sword. However, the skeleton knight realizes his fighting style and uses an attack that makes Earth's bow fly away. With no other choice, he uses his trump card, his shield bow, to keep attacking. Unfortunately, his opponent finds the battle amusing, showing no signs of feeling threatened. The worst part is that Earth knows he has a point. After all, his secret bow isn't his best weapon, as it can only shoot special arrows, and he can't use any of his archer skills. Nevertheless, Earth exerts himself, moving quickly, trying to win in any way possible. The skeleton knight starts getting irritated with his opponent's constant movement. He then uses a power to increase his speed and attacks Earth, throwing the boy against the wall. Earth panics because he realizes he can't move. The skeleton knight admits he didn't expect to use his ability and says he'll end the fight, which had already lasted too long. He declares that he'll send Earth to his god, but seconds before he attacks, Earth manages to move and quickly dodges the strike. He kicks the skeleton and declares that there are no gods in that world. For Earth, the only thing present is human will, fighting to survive even when everything goes wrong. He decides to show his will to his opponent. Earth jumps to his steel whip and binds the skeleton knight. Then he uses the ring's magic and asks the fairies to grant his wish. While Earth casts the spell, the skeleton realizes he's casting a spell and tries to stop it by attacking with his weapon, breaking Earth's shield. Even without any defense, he remains focused on finishing the spell. Then the circle outlining the power area appears. The skeleton knight attempts to attack again to prevent the spell from completing, but Earth moves faster and casts Prism Nova. The attack area hits the opponent, and Earth hopes for the enchantment to result in petrification or paralysis, as they are his best attacks, and the ring's ability works randomly. Unfortunately, Earth sees that the magic didn't grant any of his attacks, and the skeleton is still alive, albeit damaged. However, his luck appears. The Fairy Queen appears to help Earth, thanks to the power of his ring. She casts a spell on the skeleton knight, and Earth seizes the opportunity to run to his bow. With it in his hands and his adversary petrified, Earth uses all possible attacks with his bow, hitting the opponent with several arrows. To finish, he throws 2 vials that cause an explosion in the area. Thus, Earth successfully concludes the battle. Andrew returns to his human form and congratulates the boy on his victory. The knight explains that Earth managed to defeat him before his soul disappeared, which was even better than he expected, as he got to meet his end as a human and not as a monster. Andrew still admits that he thought Earth had no chance of winning as he was fighting alone. However, as grateful as he is, his time is running out. So Andrew hurries and says that, as a reward, Earth can keep his knight's sword. It was already quite damaged and couldn't be used in battle, but it could be sold as an antique for a certain amount of money. Earth thanks and accepts the gift. Afterward, Andrew says that even if Earth didn't believe in gods, he did because he found his end still as a human, which for him is luck that only a god could give. His former companions appear to take Andrea and he bids farewell, saying he will pray for God to bless Earth's path. After his departure, the doors open and all players receive an urgent announcement. The game says that one of the secret bosses has been defeated, unlocking a new type of weapon, the Knight's Sword, a weapon superior to a common sword with long reach and powerful attack. As the announcement states that one of the secret bosses has been defeated, Earth thinks it means that there are others in the dungeon and probably more weapons to be unlocked. Later, after the long adventure, Earth tries to repair his equipment that was broken during the battle against the Skeleton Knight. However, as they were severely damaged, he thanks the materials for their help and turns them into a new shield. But his new bow and leather equipment became junk, and Earth recognizes that they need repairs, which will undoubtedly weigh on his pocket. Luckily, he got Andrew's sword as a reward, which could help in that regard. However, even though Earth managed to finish the dungeon alone and defeat one of the secret bosses, there were still others in the game to be defeated. In a dimly lit room, a woman asserts that player PN0EA seems to be having fun, and the man she's talking to responds that his learning seems to be progressing rapidly thanks to that archer, and they need to thank him. The woman reveals that she has a problem because PN1EB is complaining about getting bored. The man gives a mischievous smile and allows her to take a walk. Back with his group, Earth thanks his friends for the invitation. Swai informs that Nora and Kazamine can't play today, so he suggests they find a rogue to increase the team's damage. Earth counters that they would only have Millie as a healer that way. Millie says the plan is to have a new healer today. Earth shows some impatience for being a newcomer and mentions that she hasn't even arrived yet. Swai feels awkward and informs that she will be late, but Earth tries to show empathy for the group's decision, saying he doesn't mind if she's a little late. Rage notes that she has a strong personality, and Earth continues to make an effort to be understanding, saying it's just a matter of him not caring about it. Swai apologizes and explains that there was no one else available for today, but Earth reassures his partner, saying there was nothing to be done because no tank or healer was available, and Zwei becomes more relaxed. The novice healer arrives, displaying quite a bit of arrogance, thinking that the whole group was there just to welcome her. Zwei scolds the girl for being late and informs Earth that her name is Elizabeth, but that she goes by Eliza to shorten it. She's a good mage, so no one should worry. Earth feels awkward about his companion's concern in introducing the newcomer and realizes how much his friends respect him as the guild leader. Zwei insists that Eliza apologize to the leader for the delay, but the healer disdains Earth, saying he looks like a weak archer, questioning if he will really be useful because he seems almost like an NPC. Confidently, Earth responds that he will prove his worth in combat inside the dungeon. Arriving there, Earth begins the mission by disarming several traps easily and showing great knowledge about them, leaving Eliza perplexed. She admits that at least he is useful for that. On the 5th floor, Zwei says the group needs to rest, but Eliza retorts that there's no time for that. The rest of the group warns that they need to proceed carefully from there because dangerous creatures live on that floor. Earth knows they are the lesser liches. Eliza loses her tough demeanor and asks if these enemies are really dangerous. Earth explains that no physical damage works against them, and they use various status effects to stop the opponent's movements. They are so feared that their nickname is Trauma Generators. Millie calms the group and states that she can undo freezing and paralysis effects, and Eliza cures petrification. Rona adds that she has learned spells that can help, and Zwei reminds them that they have dealt with a lesser lich before. Earth is alerted that 12 enemies are approaching, 4 of them being lesser liches. Zwei makes sure there are no traps in the room, and the guild prepares for battle right there because it is dangerous to walk through the dungeon. While everyone thinks about the strategy they will use, Eliza is trembling with fear. Zwei orders the girl to use an attack spell, but she is paralyzed with fear. The enemies approach, and Earth takes the lead, firing a wide arrow. Eliza uses Holy Ray, and Millie finishes with Explosion. An explosion covers the opponents, but as the dust settles, they continue advancing unharmed. Rage protects the group with defensive abilities, aggro control, and taunt. An enemy tries to bypass his shield, but his defense magic prevents him from reaching the group. Taking advantage of the protection, Rona uses War Spirit Twin Fists, weakening the enemy with her fists, and Zwei finishes him off. However, the other enemies emerge from behind the guild, and Rage is petrified by the liches. Zwei asks Eliza to heal Rage and warns that without a tank, it will quickly be in trouble, but the mage is still scared. The lich tries to attack Eliza, but Rona protects her, keeping the enemy away. Meanwhile, the rest of the group is suffering and spending all their mana, but Earth throws 3 potions at the opponents, destroying them. Now more relaxed, Eliza heals Rage with Rapidum, Commandant Lux, and Stone Break Cure. With their tank back in the fight, the group gains confidence and finishes the battle. After the battle, Eliza asks Earth why he didn't use the potions earlier, as they were so powerful. The archer explains that they are dangerous to use and you can't carry many at once. The mage argues that if he had been faster, he could have avoided much of the situation, but Sui gets irritated and intervenes, telling her to stop complaining about the leader. Eliza threatens to start an argument, but Millie tells the two to behave, reminding them that they are not only with guild members today. The two brawlers stop instantly. Earth has fun thinking that Millie is scary when she gets angry. Eliza apologizes for being scared, but the archer motivates the mage because the dungeon is not over yet, and the group needs her healing, making Eliza more excited. The guild completes the dungeon and celebrates the victory, planning to play again sometime. As they say their goodbyes, the figure of that mysterious woman appears again, watching the group. The next day, Earth realizes that two new weapons have appeared in the game, a Japanese bao and an utachi. Then he remembers that Kazumine from Blue Color had a somewhat samurai-like style and would love the utachi. An apparently innocent girl approaches the archer and asks if his name is Earth. The protagonist notices that the girl has pointed ears, Japanese clothing, and dragon horns, and is not a player avatar. He confirms his name and asks for hers. She avoids the question, saying she's like the younger sister of the fairy queen. Earth raises an alert and senses trouble. He asks the reason the girl sought him out, and she replies that she's interested in experiencing his lips, moving directly toward him. He pushes the girl away with a fan and says she's just like her sister. The girl finds it amusing that Earth hit her with a fan and says she understands why her sister liked him. Earth finds all of this somewhat ridiculous, but the girl continues, saying that her sister mentioned that the archer made wonderful food and she would like to try it. Earth refuses, saying he's going to the armor shop, but the girl interferes again, saying she'll go along because there won't be a chance to get out again like today. The archer is defeated by her insistence, and they go together. Arriving there, the girl gets excited about the equipment, saying she's impressed that human hands can create such things, but Earth tells her not to touch anything. The shopkeeper says that Earth brought a cute girl to the shop today, but he avoids the subject, asking the attendant to repair the cloak he's wearing. The shopkeeper says, judging by the state of the cloak, it would be easier for him to buy a new one than to fix it. He remembers that he has abused the cloak a lot and asks for a new armor, made of wild bear skin and silver, which he had in his inventory. The blacksmith designs a defense plus 70 armor with durability and motivation bonuses, charging 12,000 glow for labor, saying she'll let him know when it's ready. The girl with pointed teeth interferes again, saying that now Earth can cook for her. So Earth prepares a rabbit steak with herbs, and the girl loves the dish, praising every detail of the recipe. Earth thanks her, and she repeats it twice more. The archer jokes that it's clear she's really the fairy queen's sister. He asks if she is also a fairy like her sister, but the girl says she can't give details about that and not reveal her real name, telling Earth he can call her whatever he wants. The archer calls the girl Ryuchan because she has Japanese dragon horns. She likes the nickname and plans to visit Earth from time to time. Earth hopes she doesn't cause any trouble, and meanwhile, an important announcement appears for all players. Earth goes to his blacksmith friend and they comment that the announcement was about a hidden detail in the game, that stronger abilities would only be learned if players became specialists in a playstyle, choosing between mage or warrior, for example. Earth thinks this will annoy players, and Blacks asks what he will do since he has only a month to review the abilities, and maybe this will cause problems in future fights if he doesn't change. Earth reflects that if he specializes only in physical attacks, he will have more firepower in the game, but he remembers that the current style is more fun for him and decides to continue as it is. Blacks comments that players who are craftsmen part-time are disappearing, and if a nice guy like Earth stays there, he will feel less lonely. Earth is happy with the compliment from his comrade and reflects that making people happy with food is also a form of strength, and he doesn't want to lose that. The armor is ready and Earth loves the result, happy with the durability and motivation bonuses. The blacksmith asks to keep Earth's old cloak, thinking he was going to throw it away, but he says he'll figure something out with the equipment. Earth analyzes that in this game it's possible to touch equipment directly, and that's why he gets attached to his weapons and feels sad to say goodbye. To him, getting rid of his old cloak is like meeting someone and having to say goodbye forever. The fairy queen appears in Earth's path and puts up a barrier around everyone. First, she apologizes and says that Earth will never be able to make a contract with a fairy, making him wonder if fairies hate him so much. But it's the opposite. Fairies love Earth too much. The queen even brought superior fairies with her, and all of them would love to make a contract with the archer. However, the citizen fairies found out about this, and 80% of the population went to the queen's gates and asked for permission to make a contract with Earth. As the fairy queen, she cannot ignore the will of the people, and if a fairy made a contract with him, it could cause a revolt in the kingdom. The lack of a contract with a fairy can make Earth's journey much more difficult, but he doesn't complain, saying it's part of life. The Queen is surprised by Earth's understanding and says he is really different, compensating the archer with 2 powers. These 2 techniques are recreations of powerful abilities created during the time of the 21st Fairy Sovereign. The first is 7 falling stars, which increases the bow's damage when hitting 7 arrows in a row on the target within 30 seconds. The other ability is Sacrifice Bow, which sacrifices all MP, 90% of HP, and his own bow in exchange for firing an extremely powerful arrow. The Queen warns that this power is very dangerous and should only be used as a last resort because it sacrifices almost all of his attributes and even his weapon. She explains that the stats can be recovered with good rest. Earth reflects that his beloved weapon would be gone forever if he used the techniques, so he must think carefully before resorting to such an extreme ability. He says he shouldn't use the sacrifice ability but will practice the other technique. The Queen asks to keep it a secret and informs that the path to the Fairy Kingdom is open to all adventurers in a new game update. She invites Earth for a visit once the path is open. Before leaving, Earth gives a large amount of food to the fairies and says that the next time they meet, it will be in the Fairy Kingdom. One of the fairies says there's no need to wait so long and that she could meet Earth in secret. The Queen gets angry and jealous, questioning why the fairy wants to see Earth without the group, but the fairy replies that she wants to make a contract with the archer and finds it unfair that the Queen always visits him alone. Awkwardly, Earth smiles and realizes that the Fairy Kingdom update will stir things up a lot. Earth is cooking for his friends when Zui asks the protagonist if he heard about the campaign. He replies yes, as it was important news. Rona gets curious and asks what it's about. Earth informs that there are 4 games using VR. One more, a fighting game, an FPS, and another one about mechs. Until then, each used a different VR helmet, but the companies decided to work together to increase their fan base, and now you can play with any of the helmets. Zue comments that the company started a big campaign offering a 15-day free trial, and Earth says that the addition of the Fairy Kingdom begins on the day of this campaign. Zue finishes by saying that these 4 games will have many more players, and tries to steal one of the ready steaks, but Earth hits his friend with a fan, stating that the food is for the customers. Then the protagonist hands the fan to Nora in case his red-haired friend tries another prank, but she gets excited and hits the boy for no reason, making Earth praise her attitude. Casimine joins the conversation, noting that since the number of players will increase so much, guilds need to prepare to recruit. Meanwhile, Nora practices her new fan with air blows, leaving Zwei worried about her physical integrity. She asks if their group could recruit some of these new players to become a medium-sized guild. But before that, they need to put Eliza in line, otherwise it could become a problem for the newcomers. Zwei remembers the girl in combat, paralyzed by fear, and saved by the rest of the group. Rana comments that it was Earth who saved Eliza on that occasion, and Zwei realizes that this would be a good time to invite the archer to his guild. Patiently, the protagonist declines because he doesn't want to be tied to a specific group, free to do as he pleases. However, Earth omits another reason for not wanting to join the guild. This reason is the Fairy Queen and her sister, but he doesn't reveal the exact reason because while reflecting alone, the Queen's sister appears behind the food, startling the boy. Earth takes the fan from Nora's hand and pushes Ryu away with a hit, reminding everyone again that those steaks are for customers. The girl asks if it's fair to look at that delicious meat and not be able to eat even a little, but Earth retorts that she is greedy because she had already eaten 14 steaks. While the two argue, Millie notices Ryu's unusual clothes for the region and asks who the girl is. Millie thinks she doesn't seem to be a fairy. Earth tries to avoid explaining while keeping Ryu away from his food. Rage interrupts and states that the archer wasn't satisfied with the queen and is now flirting with her sister. Zwei hears and cries with envy, but Earth loses patience and knocks both down with his fan. He explains that he wanted his friends to be in his place because that girl is expensive, eating all his steaks. Millie and Nora comment quietly that Earth and that girl seem close, and that he called her Ryu. But she herself can hear the conversation, saying that only Earth can call her that name while eating a skewer that the archer released. Zwei threatens to put this on the forum, but Earth replies that he will never get food if he does that. Nora comments that he used to be a fairy charmer, but now he's a dragon babysitter, and the group agrees, laughing. Earth feels embarrassed and asks the guild to go easy on him, while reflecting alone that he doesn't know what might happen if he arrives in the Fairy Kingdom with the Queen's sister. So he maps it out in his mind, knowing that the Fairy Kingdom is southeast of the game's second city, Nexia. The castle is in the center, and the cities spread out and across, with forts serving as checkpoints for each cardinal direction. The Fairy Kingdom update was added to the game today, and a large part of the players are walking there, all on the same path, so it would be interesting to talk to these new players because they all have a common goal. Then Earth puts his plan into action and soon arrives at the northern fort with some players. While waiting in line to enter, someone approaches him and asks if they could take a look at the ring on his left hand. Earth remembers that the fairy queen had given him this accessory and that it would serve as a pass. As soon as he shows the ring, the man recognizes it as the queen's ring and introduces himself as responsible for the northern fort. He informs that the queen requests Earth's immediate presence, so he grants the archer a mount called Pikasha, a huge bird that few fairies have the privilege of using. Earth must use Pikasha to reach the castle city. Although shy about all the attention that Pikasha attracted among the players, Earth climbs on the bird and notices that the mount is extremely soft. They take off, and the boy observes that Pikasha creates a barrier that blocks most of the wind, preventing him from falling. Flying like that, feeling the wind at heights, is truly a worthy fantasy story. In the late afternoon, Earth arrives at the castle and the gates open. The fairy queen receives the protagonist with her fairies, and he bows before the sovereign, thinking to himself that she must be relieved to know that he wouldn't make fun of her in a place like that. The queen had prepared an entire parade just for Earth's arrival, who would be the star of the event. While parading for the population in the parade, he reflects that he doesn't like to attract attention, but it would be a waste of time to refuse that. Despite everything, he was feeling good in the parade, waving to everyone and being received with applause and fireworks. Then he realizes that few players would have an experience like that, so he should take the opportunity to have fun. Even if the experiences were not real, the memories would last forever. After the parade, Earth comments to the queen that he found the parade a bit exaggerated, but she replies that the goal was to show the fairies of the kingdom which city he came from because everyone was waiting for his arrival. Embarrassed, she admits that there were rumors that she was monopolizing him, and the boy confirms the rumor in his head. The monarch rises and approaches Earth intimidatingly, just to reveal that she might keep him just for herself. A servant asks her to maintain composure, so the queen changes her speech, saying that she would be happy if Earth stayed in the kingdom for a while, and that she didn't plan to leave guards or watchers with him. He replies that starting tomorrow he will walk around the city like a common adventurer, but he thinks to himself that he will return to the fort city and explore. With the end of the audience, Earth realizes that this is his longest gaming session and maybe it's time to take a nap, but the queen appears again, inviting the boy to sleep in her room instead of logging out. Earth forces a laugh for a few seconds until he simply disappears from their running. He jumps through the window and runs away until he reaches a safe distance and realizes that he had escaped through the window like a thief because he had used the benevolent theft skill without even realizing it. So Earth leaves the castle and mounts Pikasha again, heading towards the southern fort city. As it was the farthest region from Nexia, he would have a quieter place to maintain his anonymity. Arriving there, he goes straight to the city's tavern, where he starts boasting that he defeated 8 high rabbits. An employee is interested in the archer's story and asks if he found any ladraves during that adventure. To impress the woman, the boy claims that one of these birds tried to steal his prey but was also defeated with another arrow. She praises Earth's aim, who asks if there is anywhere he can pay to use a kitchen. The attendant releases the kitchen in the back and Earth starts the work, deciding that he will use the tavern as a base while he is in the city because it was the mission center of the place and the second floor was an inn where he could sleep. About the meat, he decides to season it to refine the taste and cut it into small slices to remove that strong gamey flavor. While savoring the meat, he decides to create a simple recipe that highlights the ingredient: a grilled high rabbit skewer with Lido vegetable, which would grant a medium speed enhancement to whoever ate it. In addition to this dish, he tried a mixture of high rabbit meat with ground remains of ladrave transformed into a dumpling. After developing the new recipes, he prepares the meals and tastes them. First, the high rabbit skewer, which he can feel the flavor spreading with each bite. Then the ground meat, which also wasn't bad at all. Suddenly, some customers are interested in Earth's dishes, and soon the entire tavern is filled with the archer's recipes. He thought he wouldn't cook while in the fairy kingdom, but he was satisfied with the situation because at least he was making some money and getting to know other people. For a few days, Earth's game cycle was completing missions, cooking what he hunted, and enjoying food and drink with his newest friends. He was having a great time with the fairies of the south until one of the fairies invades the tavern, shouting to hide Earth because the daughter of the responsible for the southern fort is coming. Quickly, Earth hides behind the counter as the woman arrives. She enters the tavern asking for a human who's been cooking some exotic recipes. She claims to be looking for him to become her cook, and Earth's is still hidden, finds the woman's way of speaking somewhat arrogant. The tavern employee says he wasn't there, but the woman is sure he is nearby, and she is sure Earth would never refuse an invitation to be her cook. The employee insists on the story, responding that she scolded Earth for wanting to leave without preparing properly, but he left for an important matter to the east. The daughter of the fort's responsible doesn't completely believe it, but orders her guards to gather information about the adventurers to the north, stating that no cook can leave the city without serving her first. After that, she leaves and the tavern customers comment on how that woman continues to be an idiot. The employee releases Earth from hiding and mentions his name, making the archer wonder if she knew who he was since he had omitted his name not to attract attention. The queen had ordered everyone not to say anything, even if they recognize Earth. The attendant comments that that woman always causes many problems because of her personality, but no one does anything because she is the daughter of the fort's manager. The father never punishes the daughter for the bad attitudes she has, so the woman continues spoiled and doing whatever she wants. To avoid causing more problems for the tavern, Earth decides to leave. His new friend is sad about the boy's departure, but he reminds everyone that they all had great moments together, and that's what matters most. Thus, he waits for nightfall and leaves. He reaches the city gates with a hood, but is soon recognized by the guards. However, they show to be on the protagonist's side, commenting that they heard that the idiot girl caused too many problems. There are people gathering evidence of her behavior to report to the queen, and a guard asks Earth to come back when everything is calmer, opening the gates for him. Already outside, a creature approaches the boy and, as thanks for the delicious recipes he created in the city, offers to serve as a mount to his destination. Earth agrees and climbs onto the monster's back, saying goodbye to the south and heading for his journey. Later in the Fairy Kingdom castle, it comes to the queen's knowledge that the daughter of the responsible for the southern fort is causing many problems and acted badly against a human adventurer. The queen is revolted with the complaint as the fairies wish to create a bond of friendship between them and men, and something needs to be done about it. One of the fairies reveals that this human adventurer was Earth, and the queen is surprised. Arriving in the city, Earth apologizes to his new companion for making him run for so long, but the beast responds that there's no need to apologize because it doesn't matter to her. Around them, a fairy band played a lively medieval tune. Earth asks if playing instruments is in fashion, and the beast replies that promoting the arts is common in any city of the Fairy Kingdom. He then maps out the cultural trends of the region. To the north lies Shipia, the city of literature. To the east, there's the city of literature, Sanaza. To the west, the city of sculptures is Rangello. And they are in Strubert, the southern city, where the citizens are moved by music. Earth gets excited, feeling like he could listen to any kind of music in that place. However, he soon yawns and realizes he needs some rest. The beast points to an inn where she usually stays, and Earth follows his companion to the place. Arriving there, the innkeeper asserts that with all these introductions and the fact that Zetten, the wild hare, personally brought Earth, he is surely welcome in the establishment. Zetten is embarrassed by the old man mentioning his nickname Wild Hare and asks him to stop saying that, but the old man just laughs and informs that he got rooms close to each other. Before entering the rooms, Earth teases the beast, bidding farewell to Zetten using the nickname he just discovered, and the monster clearly is not pleased, but takes the banter in stride. Lying on his bed, Earth reflects on what he has just experienced before reaching the south, feeling lucky to be saved by a fairy famous enough to have a nickname. After that, he logs out and goes to sleep. The next morning, Earth wakes up excited for the new day, but when he tries to get out of bed, he feels a weight that immobilizes him. At first, he thought it was a bug in the game, but as soon as he notices a lump under the blanket, he lifts the sheet and sees the fairy queen on top of him. He tells the girl to get off him because if someone enters the room, they will misunderstand, but the queen tightens her grip on the archer, saying she won't let him go because he'll hate her anyway. Because of her childish attitude, Earth asks if the girl has turned into a child again. The innkeeper opens the door at that moment and calls Earth for breakfast. As soon as he looks properly and sees the two lying together on the bed, the old man apologizes and says he'll come back later. However, Earth seizes the opportunity and begs the old man to save his life. The archer's shout immediately summons Zetten, and the beast arrives at the door, ready to provide assistance. However, the beast also looks at the scene a second time and then compliments Earth for bringing the girl to the room. He responds that he didn't invite anyone to sleep with him and asks for help to get the queen off him. On the other hand, the monarch squeezes the archer even tighter because she's afraid he'll leave the kingdom. As she emerges from under the blanket and shows her crown, the two outside realize it's the fairy queen in that, at the very least, embarrassing situation. To make matters worse, Ryu shows up out of nowhere, exuding so much hatred in her words that her voice could be mistaken for that of a dragon. She looks directly at her sister and asks what she's doing there. With a certain cynicism, the queen replies that she came to apologize for what happened in the southern fort. After the accusations she received, she punished the responsible for the fort, her daughter, and her 80 private soldiers. Then Earth asks how they were punished, and the monarch explains that she took them all to a special area, causing lethal damage 30 times to everyone and healing 29 times, destroying their minds. Afterward, she demoted the girl to the lowest rank of a soldier, just like the others. Shocked by such coldness, Zeton and the old man conclude that the 30 times the queen punished everyone doesn't match the 29 times she healed, and they wonder what happened to the group after the last lethal damage. Resigned, Ryu comments that her sister is like that, and these actions give her chills. Earth tries to justify, explaining that everyone in the kingdom was kind to him, and it's not like he hates the kingdom or anything. The queen's eyes light up upon hearing that the boy doesn't hate the kingdom, but her sister smacks her on the head, accusing her of being too forward. With that, they begin to argue, and Ryu tries to pull the queen out of the room by her ear. Before they leave, the queen politely bids farewell to everyone present, as if nothing had happened, and simply leaves. Zeton takes the opportunity to comment that he knew Earth was close to the queen, but not to a Draconato as well. Hearing this, the old man recalls that fairies have had deadly battles against this type of dragon, and Zeton adds that if the population finds out about Ryu's presence, some serious trouble will certainly occur. Therefore, the two promise to keep it quiet. The innkeeper goes to attend to other matters, while Earth vents that the morning didn't start on the right foot. Zeton doesn't take it seriously, as he would love two beautiful girls to fight like that for him. Suddenly, a fairy knocks on the door looking for the wild hare, as she needs help rescuing her missing daughter. After calming down a bit, she introduces herself as Karen Fenrir, and Zeton comments that this name belongs to a noble family. She explains that her daughter goes out every day at the same time for a walk but hasn't returned at the usual time. Despite Karen searching everywhere, there's no sign of her daughter. Zeton argues that the clan has the power to transform into a wolf whenever they want, and that ability would save the girl from any attacker. Fenrir is not convinced and shows a picture of her daughter, offering a reward for her rescue. The duo accepts the mission. At the beginning of the search, Zeton claims this was a mission for him alone, and Earth insists on helping because he wants to repay for the ride he got to the south. Moreover, Karen offered the same reward to the archer, so some extra cash wouldn't hurt. The beast responds that the only way to repay the ride properly would be for Earth to make that dish that only he knows how to prepare. Following the lead of a guard who claimed to have seen the girl, they head in the indicated direction until the archer uses his ability to sense the presence of monsters, realizing two on the right and one on the left. Thus, 3 goblins appear and try to attack, but the ambush is revealed and the element of surprise is lost, making the monsters predictable enough to be defeated with a single counterattack. After the victory, Zeton praises the archer's perception skill, and he exhausts a good portion of his mana to expand his awareness around the map, seeing a group of monsters and 2 other things that were not enemies. Approaching the area, Earth activates long-distance vision and locates Mina Fenrir, the missing girl injured and surrounded by goblins. Then the duo devises a plan where Zeton must pass by the girl and throw a rare potion to her, while Earth provides cover. With the strategy in play, the archer hits the back of a goblin, and the wild hare arrives recklessly, mowing down all the goblins nearby. He apologizes to the girl and throws the potion at her, healing her wounds. Thus, she restores her HP and rejoins the fight, helping the group eliminate the remaining enemies. With everything resolved, Zeton praises Earth's teamwork, and Mina thanks for the help. The beast explains that it wasn't exactly help, and they were paid by the girl's mother to rescue her. Mina recognizes the wild hare and feels lucky to be saved by the famous Zeton Sama. Earth finds amusement in the flattery but lets it go and asks why Mina didn't turn into a wolf to retaliate against the attack. The noble tells that she was walking when she smelled something slightly sweet, and suddenly everything became confusing. When she realized it, she was surrounded by goblins and for some reason, she couldn't transform. In an attempt to restore Mina's ability, Earth hands her a potion, and she uses the item to become a giant wolf. Surprised, Mina doesn't understand, while Earth discovers that the anti-venom antidote took effect, so she was poisoned. After the cure, Earth asks Mina to return to human form and go back to the city on Zeton's back while he rests a bit before returning. Once they leave, Earth demands that some being reveals itself in a bush because he sensed 2 presences that were not monsters. He analyzes that the goblins had expensive equipment and seemed well coordinated, and this being had the ability to use poison to weaken a Fenrir. Earth is about to reveal the only race with enough ability to do all this, but decides to throw a potion at the bush first. The explosion exposes the hidden being and a human falls to the ground, screaming in pain. The man prepares for the counterattack and his pupils transform into a strange symbol, emitting a robotic sound. Earth feels like a human but not a player. If he lets the man go, the news that a man kidnapped a fairy of nobility could ruin the relationship between fairies and humanity, possibly leading to war. Moreover, knowing the one more admins, Earth believes it's quite possible. The opponent attacks with a sword, but Earth is faster and counterattacks with his triangle shot, bringing down the adversary. Having dodged the counterattack earlier, the archer changed his position in the air, losing speed and consequently weakening the blow. Fallen and weakened, the man doesn't understand why another human would attack him. He starts belittling fairies, demeaning their race, while Earth dismisses the hate speech. He explains that he doesn't care about someone's race or country of origin. He believes in cooperation and harmony among peoples. Unconvinced, the man tries to retaliate, but the delayed effect of the triangle shot takes its toll, and the man shatters like glass before he can do anything. Reflecting on his opponent's words, Earth is convinced that accepting differences among beings, be they fairies or dragonkin, is the best path for everyone to finally walk side by side. To achieve peace, he knows he'll first encounter war, and victory doesn't come with mercy, even if it involves a fellow human. On the way back, Earth encounters Zetten and Mina, who were spying on the archer. The wild hare was curious if the protagonist could catch the mouse hidden. With the end of the spectacle, the beast offers a ride and everyone returns safely. Finally, Karen has her daughter back in her arms, and she pays the 100,000 glow reward to each of the two heroes. Earth goes further and asks for an extra favor, leaving Zetten disturbed because it was already a lot of money. Earth continues, asking Mina to spend time with the wild hare. The beast can't believe what his companion was doing, but the archer seems determined, arguing that the girl seems enchanted with Zetten. She responds that she'd heard many stories about his bravery and always wanted to meet him. Zetten scolds his friend for the move, but Earth reminds the beast of what she said earlier about wanting to be adored by a beautiful woman. Then he asks the three to work out the details and pushes them out of the room. Afterward, he summons the fairy queen, who thinks she was called for a love confession, but soon receives a fan hit on the head for her audacity. In reality, Earth contacted her to explain this situation, about how a human was provoking a conflict against the fairies, and that Earth killed him to cover up the case and prevent a bigger problem. The Queen promises to investigate and prevent a war between the two races. The communication ends and Earth asks for permission to sleep, but the monarch lies on the protagonist's bed, pretending to have heard that he wants to sleep beside her. As he denies, saying that she insists on pretending he did and calls the boy shy. He loses his temper and shouts at her to leave. She rises, asking when they'll meet again, as she needs to thank the hero for the services rendered to the kingdom. Earth thinks she's talking about some formal thanks, so he promises they'll meet again, but doesn't want any reward. Thinking to himself, Earth notes that this behavior of the fairy queen is not so different from the daughter of the leader of that fort. With the adventure in the south concluded, Earth bids farewell to his friends and discovers that Zetten and Mina got along so well the previous night that they're going to live together in the Fenrir mansion. He's happy with the great news and greets his comrade, thanking him for the company and shared experiences. Finally, they part ways and the archer calls his Pikasha by clapping, but the mount doesn't appear. The old man laughs and comments that this bird species sometimes doesn't even let the royal family ride. Earth laughs because he was just trying in vain. However, to everyone's surprise, Pikasha appears and Earth sets off on a new journey. During the flight, he asks the bird to land before reaching the city, as he doesn't want to cause a commotion. Pikasha feels rejected, but Earth tries to console it. After landing, the cook prepares a feast for his mount, who devours everything in a few seconds. Pikasha is delighted and decides to reciprocate, handing over the heart feather of Pikasha, an item that grants several very important advantages for combat. Earth is excited about the power of the item, and the bird bids farewell. Returning to the kingdom, Earth goes back to Blacks for new equipment, but lacking the ideal material to treat a bow, he decides to make do with what he has. Using metal, he creates a new X-shaped bow, even though it's heavier than the old one. He could get used to it. After all, his old attack power was 46, meaning it increased by 9. However, despite being stronger, the metal bow is more challenging to maintain. Eager to test his new equipment, Earth goes out to hunt, but a last-minute announcement appears, indicating that the challenge of the departed has been completely released. From the panel, the labyrinth's guardian emerges, thanking the players who freed the souls that were trapped and suffering after purifying the perverse spiritual energy residing in the labyrinth. With that, she could finally return to the heavens. Attentive to the message, Earth realizes that this was the background story. Then the Guardian offers a reward for some players who fought the most for her cause. Earth notes that a PvP tournament is approaching where only those who defeat a secret boss can participate. All those items indeed seem very powerful. Finally, the Guardian asks if the archer wants to join the mission, but he refuses without a second thought. Even though the rewards were tempting, he no longer wanted to fight in public. Out of nowhere, a strange scream is heard in the distance, so odd that Earth claims never to have heard anything like it before. Even though he didn't want to get into trouble, he would regret not investigating, so he goes after the screams. Approaching the strange sound, he sees a newly born dragon inside a broken egg, surrounded by 4 people who were unconscious or dead. However, as soon as Earth realizes what he's witnessing, the bodies of the NPCs completely disintegrate. Touched by his familiar compassion, the archer approaches the small creature. who responds with some weak baby roars. Earth knows he could never leave the creature there, at the mercy of its own fate, so he picks up the little one, and the endless roars make Earth think the creature is hungry. He collects a steak from his inventory and feeds it to the little one. Having done that, he starts wondering what the heck he's going to do with this pet. He could go back to first, but he imagines the entire population of the city surrounding him for having this exotic creature in his arms. In other words, that wouldn't go well. Or maybe the fairy kingdom could be a destination, but Earth also suspects that getting there this way would cause a lot of problems. Not knowing where to take the dragon, he decides to get more food for it first as he went hunting to test his new bow, initially. Soon, Earth is cooking his familiar recipes while the little one feasts on more raw meat. Watching the creature, he thinks about how every living being seems cute when they're a baby. But this cuteness only works for appearance, as the dragon starts tugging at Earth's pants, asking for the food he's eating. The archer fulfills the pet's wish, but soon realizes that his giant pot has been completely emptied. With a full belly, the creature falls asleep, leaving Earth to remember that the journey is always better with friends and that we should be supportive and affectionate with them. But he doesn't know if that applies to a dragon. Therefore, he summons the fairy queen to resolve this situation. Emerging at the speed of light, the monarch arrives with her usual posture, thinking that Earth called her for romantic purposes, but the boy points to the problem sleeping behind him. Astounded, she asks how a baby red dragon ended up there, and Earth realizes by the queen's reaction that this little one is indeed a complication. Once tensions calm down, he explains the whole situation to the sovereign, who responds that it is indeed complicated. Wild dragons never leave their country, so that their terrible power doesn't cause unnecessary conflicts. Since the archer didn't know the difference between wild and common dragons, she explains that both are extremely powerful, but common dragons have learned to tame their abilities, making it possible to form relationships with other races. On the other hand, the wild ones gave up control and became a kind of walking time bomb. To make matters worse, this little one behind him is a red dragon, even stronger than the others. So powerful that they became the symbol of their nation, the royal family of the Wild Dragon Kingdom. Connecting the dots, Earth realizes that the royal family's child has been kidnapped, and that's why this situation could escalate catastrophically, as dragons won't come to rescue the kid through dialogue. Then, tension begins to show as a fairy messenger informs Her Majesty that red dragons are approaching the kingdom at high speed. As she starts her plan to protect the queen, the messenger notices a red dragon baby taking a nap right there. With that, she loses her temper and wonders why the queen would kidnap a darn baby dragon, but the monarch responds in kind, blaming a certain archer who was nearby. Hearing everything, Earth himself intervenes in the conversation and asks from which direction these dragons are coming. As they arrive at the invasion site, the dragon parents land in front of the protagonist, causing a massive tremor in the earth. Needless to say, Earth saw the size of those monsters, and it wasn't difficult to conclude that shooting them wasn't a safe option. Then the dragon father asks if it was Earth and the fairy queen who kidnapped his daughter. The dragon's voice is transmitted directly into the archer's head, leaving his ears ringing like a sports referee's whistle. With that, the queen decides to take the lead in the negotiation and tries to explain the misunderstanding, but the wild dragon tells her to shut up since they are talking to Earth, not her. Turning his attention back to the son of a man, the human justifies that he doesn't know who kidnapped the baby, but that the responsible parties are probably dead. He simply found the cub and took her in. But the dragons aren't convinced by this story and demand that Earth return the little one immediately as proof of his innocence. Without wasting time, the boy puts the baby in the mother's claw, who fills with joy at finally finding her offspring. Additionally, the father apologizes to Earth since he accessed the daughter's memories and confirmed that the human was telling the truth. As a reward for the embarrassment, the huge wild dragon grants a request to the archer. So Earth asks the creatures not to suspect that the fairy kingdom is behind this kidnapping and to pretend they never saw each other. The mother understands the protection of the fairies but doesn't know why they should pretend not to have met. Earth explains that he doesn't like drawing attention, so it's a request to maintain his privacy. While the mother is relieved, thinking that the human doesn't want to be associated with wild dragons, the father fulfills the wishes of that human child until the couple leaves with their offspring. With everything settled, his friend the queen thanks Earth as a queen for thinking of the fairy kingdom in such a delicate moment. As she showed gratitude by acting officially as a monarch, the archer realizes that she is finally maturing. However, as he concludes his reasoning, the queen pretends to thank Earth inside her castle, but he's a hardworking boy and prefers to go to another city to pick up some odd jobs. Finally, the girl doesn't contest this decision and even offers Picasso for a ride, promising not to tell anyone that Earth was involved in the situation. Grateful, he climbs onto his mount and travels to the city of East Fort. Upon arriving at the Sunflower Tavern, he realizes that unemployment has reached the fairy kingdom and finding a job won't be easy. until the owner of the establishment introduces herself and explains that there used to be many jobs around there, but human adventurers are taking them all, so there's rarely any left. But as he's eager to get his hands dirty, the fairy offers Earth a gig as a waiter at the Sunflower Tavern, starting tonight. As night falls and the crowd begins to increase, the boy notices that he's accumulating roles every moment, working as both a waiter, dishwashing, and cook. After his mind pops between orders and recipes for hours, Earth is exhausted and waiting for his payment until the owner comes with the money, sincerely praising Earth's effort and commitment to his own exploration. Finally, the well-deserved rest of the brave hero is about to happen as we see Earth approaching his room, thinking about the craziness of playing one more, since he started the day feeding a baby dragon and ended up washing the glasses of some drunken fairies. As soon as he enters and closes the door, he admits that all this running around was actually quite fun. And caught up in the adrenaline rush, even plans to open a restaurant when he has some decent money. After all, this type of game always has this endless hustle, while his desire is to live a quiet life in his own corner. Meanwhile, in a dark and unknown office, an old man sits at the head of a table full of men in suits, claiming that everyone agreed to keep one more running since the last results were incredible. One of the meeting participants asks about the situation of the fairy queen and Ryu, and the old man gives an enigmatic answer, stating that involvement with one of the players made the queen learn to laugh, while the dragonborn got annoyed for the same reason. A woman comments on the old man's response, emphasizing that she was also surprised when she saw it for the first time. After all, EA had become almost emotionless, and EB reacted by acting spoiled. In the end, she doesn't believe that they have changed that much. Another man joins the conversation, saying that it's incredible, and he was excited to show this world to his daughter since he discovered that there was someone so brilliant as to provoke such a situation. So everyone discusses how interesting this player is, and the guy at the other end says he's curious about this player, and that's another reason to keep the game running. And concluding the meeting, the old man announces that they need one more to train artificial intelligence. The next morning, Earth is relaxing while catching up on the latest game news, reading that Silver's group won a PvP called a Challenge of the Departed, and he bets that Glad will taste defeat this time. Enjoying the leisure and the countryside breeze, he realizes that it's been a long time since he played in such tranquility, even though that was the goal from the beginning. Unfortunately, he gets involved in so many traps that sometimes it seems like he's going to break the entire kingdom. So in thought, he wonders why he gets into so much trouble. But in the end, letting the wind take him is also a way to live life. For example, when he was a kid, Tanaka Teichi used to run and play all day, but now that he's an adult, he works so much that he doesn't have time to exercise. Therefore, he was so out of shape that it made him very down. To drown his sorrows, he became addicted to a world where he could do extraordinary things that he could never do in real life. But he confesses that maybe he's going too far because Tanaka's health won't improve with any magical skills from Earth. Lost in his thoughts, he starts to cry, but quickly wipes away the tears and continues his walk. Deep down, he knows he can't be alone for too long. When he's lonely, those twisted thoughts start to enter his mind, making him enter a somewhat depressive vibe. Who knows? But it wasn't a time for sadness. Earth really wanted some chaos, and for sure, what he doesn't lack in his circle is people wanting to make a mess. As he thinks about his comrades, the protagonist wonders if he's being a bit rude to others, distancing himself from everyone without the need. Maybe he needs to be a little kinder, because these people are what make this game so good for him in the end. Until we arrive in Sanaza, the city of the East. Moments after deciding to be friendlier, Earth gives up the idea because he has just received another unreasonable summons. The fairy queen thought it would be a great idea to summon the archer because she thinks maybe he wanted to see her again. In response to the insolence, Earth smacks the queen with a fan again. In the midst of this, the green-haired guy was hoping that Your Highness would introduce him to the protagonist, but since that wasn't possible, he took matters into his own hands, introducing himself as a green dragon, a type of wild dragon with the power to control the wind. Earth frowns at this news since he heard that this race is not known for being very friendly with others. But the dragon explains that they are an exception to this rule and mentions that they are less strong than other wild dragons but are faster and can assume human form. Therefore, many of them work as messengers. The dragon's conversation makes Earth lower his guard again, but he still doesn't understand what such a dragon would want with him. Maybe it has something to do with the red baby dragon's kidnapping, but he agreed with the dragon parents that they would never touch on that subject with anyone. Then the messenger responds that this baby dragon is having serious appetite problems and dragons need to eat a lot to develop properly. This little one is only eating half of what a dragon her age needs to grow strong. And more, the little one is eager to become a human, which is unacceptable. The messenger was sent to find out the reason for these problems, but Earth has no idea what it could be, as the baby dragon ate like a construction worker while under his care. So the queen intervenes and asks if this isn't happening because Earth's food is too good and the baby got spoiled. Then she asks the cook if he gave something special to the baby, and Earth admits that he gave soup and hamburger steak for the creature to eat. But as the green dragon doesn't know what kind of food this is and seeing that he was in trouble, Earth decides to please the messenger, frying some steaks for the dragon himself, who is delighted with that divine taste and understands why the queen gave up on her old menu. And she, in turn, takes the opportunity to praise her beloved in that very discreet way, leaving Earth annoyed again. On top of that, the two cheeky ones even ask for seconds, causing the protagonist's fury, who angrily asks what the hell this messenger came to do there after all. The green dragon realizes he lost his composure and apologizes, humbly asking the cook to prepare a few more portions for him to take to the dragon princess. Earth doesn't like the idea and claims to be out of ingredients, but the messenger is willing to gather everything needed, so he jumps out the window in an absurd hurry. Later, the gift had already been given, and the green dragon returns to his kingdom. Then Earth asks what's the deal with wild dragons being antisocial, as that one seemed too comfortable. She replies that it used to be like that, but maybe Earth himself just changed that. But he, in his classic habit of avoiding responsibilities, tries to slip away quietly, but the sovereign is not willing to let her love go away so soon. Since he's there, it would be good to enjoy the best room in the kingdom, personally prepared by the queen herself. However, Earth is not stupid enough to fall for that, as he knows the queen's plan is to enter his room at midnight to savor his body. By revealing the hoax, he manages to get rid of her and quickly escapes through the window, wondering if he really managed to establish diplomatic relations with wild dragons just with hamburger steaks. Speaking of which, at nightfall in the wild dragon kingdom, the little dragon is finally regaining her appetite with the best cuisine the world has ever seen. The baby's father asks what this means, and the messenger replies that cooking is a technology capable of making food tastier, and the baby was just missing that taste. Surprised, the dragon father didn't know that human mastered that sorcery. Many days later, the messenger is trying to replicate Earth's dish, but the taste still remains bad, even though the appearance was similar. Then he wonders if he should ask the king to teach him to cook, but maybe that's not appropriate for a proud dragon like him. Meanwhile, flying in front of the window, a wild green dragon is lurking. After watching the messenger for a while, he retreats into the forest and returns to human form. At that moment, Earth logs back in to resume the game and notices the fairy queen embracing him in bed, making the protagonist wonder if she had been clinging to him since he logged out the previous night. So as usual, he counterattacks and stuns the opponent with a pile driver, banging the queen's head against the wall. She laments being targeted in such a way so soon, but the archer announces that the bonus time is over and calls on the woman to proceed with the mission. She tries to insist on going back to bed a little longer, but Earth restrains the excited young woman with a thorn whip. Walking through the city streets, soldiers salute the hero, who feels embarrassed by all the special treatment he's attracting. He goes to the market in search of something to replace that thorn whip and realizes he needs to level up in kick and whip skills. Suddenly, the human dragon reappears and introduces himself to Earth as Emil, but the protagonist refuses to be the person the guy is looking for. However, Emil insists he's correct as he's searching for a human with black eyes and hair carrying a bow. Still, Earth keeps playing it cool, suspecting that the stranger is also a dragon, so he better not pay much attention to him. Thus, he argues that there are plenty of people with black hair out there and emphasizes that if you kick a tree, 5 archers fall at once, so it's not like he's the only one. With that, he says goodbye and walks away, linking the appearance of this wild dragon to the rescue of that red cub. He reflects that he fulfilled his responsibility on that occasion and doesn't intend to cook for a bunch of hungry dragons. After all, he's in an RPG, not the new season of MasterChef. So after buying everything he needed, he starts looking for an inn to spend the night. However, Emil appears again, this time with the fairy queen, throwing in the boy's face that he knew he was Earth. On the other side, the queen continues crying about being handcuffed with a thorn whip, but Earth can't stand this anymore and escapes the scene using the combination of the fly and high jump abilities, leaping onto the roof. His pursuers don't give up on catching the guy, so he tries to reach the inn to log out of the game. He uses a wind booster to run faster and enters the inn in a hurry, asking the clerk how much a night costs. Startled, the employee replies it's 50 glow, so Earth grabs the key and gains more time with a new high jump. The queen and the dragon even reach the inn, but Earth was already at the door of his room, so he slams it in the face of his pursuers and lies down on the bed. Before logging out, he realizes he's already too conspicuous in the fairy kingdom, so maybe it's time to look for another place to venture. The next day, Earth goes down with the keys and apologizes to the clerk, who asks what kind of crime Earth committed as the queen posted a wanted ad for him all over the city. In another part of the kingdom, she exposes the archer's hypocrisy on the walls, mentioning that even though he always says he doesn't want to attract attention, he's literally calling attention all the time. Lastly, he sees a giant billboard in the street accusing him of enticing the queen. After all that, he invades the queen's office, consumed by the exuding force of hatred, swearing revenge for the monarch's betrayal. The sovereign feels the pressure and retreats, trying to justify that the elder dragon just wanted something, but Earth doesn't want to hear excuses. After all, he thought their friendship meant something, and finally he demands that the fairy queen remove that ring she put on him. Furthermore, he informs the dragon that he won't cook anything for any flying lizard anymore and kicks the elder out of there. However, the dragon doesn't back down and asks what will happen if he doesn't want to leave, and Earth responds that he has no problem pointing the bow at the head of an old freeloader, because this wild dragon race, even after the protagonist has taken in and safely returned the royal cub, just wanted more and more instead of repaying the favor in any way. Hearing this, the elder continues without tucking his tail, threatening to convince the boy to back down through sheer ignorance. Having said that, Earth doesn't back down and the two go outside to settle the score. Soon, the elder transforms into a dragon, while Earth remembers the promise he demanded from the red dragons to keep his name low in the kingdom, as he wanted to remain anonymous. Despite that, whether they fulfilled that favor or not, it seems the dragons think humans should bow to their will, but Earth won't allow that to happen so easily. Thus, the battle begins, and the dragon decides not to start with everything, as it would be an offense to his race to get worked up against a human child. Therefore, it's up to Earth to take the first step, and he uses his new bow to shoot an arrow twister at the enemy, but the arrow doesn't even tickle the dragon. In response, the winged giant slaps the ground, forcing Earth to take a long leap to dodge, and he realizes that these simple abilities won't have any effect against an opponent of this level. On the other hand, if he takes a simple flick, he'll become a memory in an instant. So the dragon demands that the protagonist dance the deplorable dance of death, throwing the human against the ground with astonishing force. However, even extremely weakened, Earth intends to use the asphyxiation herb, but he remembers that if the herb comes back to him with the wind, it's over. Therefore, since he can't pierce that scale, maybe he can make some impact with the twin fang arrows, but not even the heavy arrow seems to hit the opponent. Offended by suffering such a pathetic attack, the dragon advances on the hero, who defends himself with a shield parry, realizing that he managed to nullify some of the force of that attack, but still couldn't avoid the damage completely, causing cracks in his shield until it breaks completely. Seeing that beloved defense equipment dissipate before his eyes, Earth promises that he won't let it go unpunished. So he uses a potion to recover his HP and convinces himself that the best thing to do is not to give up until the end, whether it's in the game or even in real life, because even though he has never tried to act cool at any moment, he knows very well that an admirable human aspect is when someone doesn't give up their fights. Having said that, the dragon decides to put an end to the battle and gets ready to breathe fire. However, Earth anticipates and uses a wind booster to quickly approach the opponent, throwing 6 infernal oils from the mine into the dragon's mouth. This causes an explosion that nearly depletes the archer's HP but leaves the rival stunned. This was Earth's chance, so he draws his bow again to take advantage of the opponent's negative status. Meanwhile, he recalls that the fairy queen gave him 2 recent techniques. He decides to put the 7 falling stars ability into practice, and soon the 7 arrows clinging to the dragon's scale attract 7 stars that fall directly onto it. After a few seconds, the dragon emerges from the massive explosion, indignant at being affected by a fairy's ability, and becomes more aggressive, reacting with a breath of wind. Soon, the absurd gust of wind carries Earth along with all the vegetation in the territory he was occupying, convincing the dragon that not even a trace of the enemy remains. However, while the dragon boasted, Earth used the wind booster to run behind a rock, using concealment to go unnoticed. He realizes he only has 1 arrow left and is about to lose the bow that has accompanied him for so long. This is the fateful moment where he decides to sacrifice his own life and that of his other self who shares his suffering, giving up his interests to open the doors to tomorrow that are about to close, ensuring that tomorrow exists for those who remain. He puts all his desire into this last arrow, and everything he has lived up to this point seems to have led to this moment. Having done that, he emerges from behind the rock, startling the dragon. We are reminded that this ability places all his life, mana, and feelings into the arrow for an incredibly powerful shot. While affirming that not even wild dragons are invincible, the enemy warns the boy that he will meet his end along with him. However, that is exactly what the archer wants. He shoots the dragon, which reacts with a wind barrier, trying to prevent the arrow from hitting him. As this is the archer's last hope, he makes his final effort for the arrow to break the barrier and pierce the rival's scale. Having done that, he sees his bow go away forever, bidding farewell to his weapon with a sad lament. Despite all his efforts, the dragon is still alive, and Earth concludes that he is no longer able to fight. He decides to use his last resort by turning into a human bomb with several infernal oils from the mine. Meanwhile, in a dark office of the game developer, two men discuss the real capability of this green dragon. A woman responds that he was statistically the weakest due to being an elder. Nevertheless, a man questions whether to decrease the damage of that oil Earth used, but the woman replies that doing so may demotivate players from trying to create new items. They comment on how the protagonist sacrificed his bow and his life for victory, and even though it's a VR, the sensations of one more are very close to reality. They are impressed that the archer ignored fear and pain to perform that final attack and managed to defeat a wild dragon. Speaking of the kamikaze, Earth is using the 2 minutes he has until respawn at the last logout point, analyzing that he may have died, but at least he wasn't defeated. Suddenly, 3 more dragons appear on the battlefield, and Earth thinks they came to rescue the green dragon. However, one of them uses a revive item on the archer, who decides to come back to life right there. As soon as he resurrects, he asks why the dragons didn't revive their comrade before him. The red dragon replies that the elder was causing many problems behind their backs, threatening the fairy queen that she would invade the kingdom if she didn't get a wanted warrant for Earth. They came to punish the offender. Earth argues that this doesn't change the fact that he killed a dragon, but their leader asserts that if the human hadn't done it, the dragons themselves would have torn the criminal apart. Finally, he compensates the protagonist for the services rendered, offering 3 very important items: a light dragon scale armor, along with 800,000 glow and an undisclosed bow. Earth thinks he doesn't have the strength to use the light armor, but soon realizes that the equipment is almost weightless, more flexible than leather. Then Earth inquires about the unknown bow, and the dragon informs him that this weapon belonged to a fairy who fought side by side with him in the past. It's a special weapon that only reveals its stats to the owner if certain requirements are met. Even though he can't use it now, in the future, the bow may open Earth's heart. After the rewards, the dragons leave and Earth falls back from exhaustion due to the delayed effect of the sacrificed bow. He didn't want to overuse his mount, but he had no choice but to call Pikasha for the usual help. The giant bird puts the exhausted human on its back and takes off. While Earth rests on the soft fur of the mount, he reflects on how happy he was on that day of the tribute he received when he arrived at the fairy kingdom, even though he usually dislikes too much attention. So he returns to the kingdom and buys a green fairy cloak to cover his armor with style, gaining bonuses of self-regeneration and a hood that increases stealth. Then he reaches the castle, where the queen is shocked to have disappointed Earth so deeply. Before reaching the throne, the fairies warn that her heart is about to explode like a balloon, so they ask the archer to take it easy on the girl. Knowing this, he presents himself to Her Majesty, who quickly apologizes for her behavior. Earth tells her that the red dragon revealed everything about the imposter who threatened to invade the kingdom if the queen didn't post wanted ads for the archer. To avoid a catastrophe, it's understandable that the sovereign granted the green dragon's demand. The fairy queen remains downcast and offers to reward Earth with anything he wants. He asks for his ring's power to be sealed, making the queen think the boy hates her. However, he explains that he's only asking to avoid attracting more attention. Finally, the queen recognizes that her treatment of Earth was not suitable for a queen, but he downplays it, thanking her for the parade and the opportunity to fly on Pikasha, experiences that can only be lived within one more. Moreover, he was able to defeat the green dragon thanks to the abilities granted by the fairy queen. Then the monarch becomes more at ease and seals the powers of the ring, asking Earth if they will see each other again. He replies that one day it will happen, and unlike other times when he had to run or escape through the window, he bids farewell and leaves slowly, observed by the queen who admires him so much. However, Earth doesn't feel like he said a decent goodbye to the fairy kingdom, so he decides to go to first to see what's going on there and bid a definitive farewell to Zen. Hey folks, that was the grand finale of this first season of the Anime. I hope you all enjoyed it. Drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel so we can bring you more anime seasons. Catch you in the next video.